Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we are so thankful to be alive in this century at this time. We are indeed grateful for the shoulders of the great men and women of years gone by, upon whose shoulders we stand today. They have paved the way for us to be able to fellowship in freedom, bask in beauty, prevail in peace, and have the hope we have today. Remind us, Heavenly Father, that it's not our intelligence, brilliance, nor might that has brought us this far, but rather it is your grace and your mercy which you have so richly bestowed upon us. We thank you. We pray for the Speaker and Deputy Speaker, the Premier and Deputy Premier, the ministers and junior ministers, the Leader of the Opposition, the Attorney General, all the members of the House of Assembly of the Virgin Islands, all who work and serve in whatever capacity in this House. Remind the leaders of this country, Father, that through the democratic process, they were elected as representatives of the people. Remind us that you are the same God who sets up and who pulls down. Remind us of how important it is to belong to something much bigger than ourselves. Father, in the name of Jesus, we refuse to be wise in our own eyes, but choose to fear you and shun evil. This will bring health to our bodies and nourishment to our bones. Father, we humble ourselves and submit to your word that speaks, exposes, sifts, analyzes, and judges the very thoughts and purposes of our hearts. Father, help us to test our own actions so that we might have appropriate self-esteem without comparing ourselves with others. May the security of your guidance allow each of us to carry our own responsibility with energy and confidence. Now, Heavenly Father, we pray for the business that will be conducted in this house today. May it be commensurate with the honor of this house. May our practice be in synergy with our profession. We pray that only what is in the best interest of your kingdom and all the people of the Virgin Islands will be promoted, promulgated in and by this august body. And Heavenly Father, while morality cannot be legislated, may it be modeled in the lives of each and every man and woman of this honorable house, for it is still true. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Help us, Father, to avoid sin, for sin will hinder our hope, prevent our progress, crush our courage, veil our vision, miss our mission, destroy our dream, weaken our witness, and cause us to lose our legacy. Teach us, Heavenly Father, that when we sin, we hurt ourselves, others, and God, because sin separates, isolates, and nullifies. Remind the leaders of our territory that their being in this honorable house is by divine appointment, regardless of the process and their position. May they not use their position as an opportunity to oppress, a platform to pretend, a cause to condemn, a venue to victimize, nor a place to persecute, but rather to be a voice for the voiceless, hope for the hopeless, and light to the lost. We pray that healthy debates will be the order of this house, that no one in this house will be so self-serving as to belittle another to make themselves look good, that issues will take precedence over insults, principle ahead of personality, truth ahead of trickery, and the people before politics. So, Heavenly Father, we pray that justice, mercy, and humility will be the hallmark of this house. For as the prophet Micah reported, that you, O Lord, require that we do what is right, have mercy, walk humbly before God. So, Father, we ask that you bless this honorable house and its proceeding. Bless all these beautiful Virgin Islands in the name that is above every name, and the name at which every knee shall bow and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. And the people of God say, Amen.
Please be seated. I call on the clerk.
Item number 2, confirmation of minutes.
Honorable member, is it your pleasure that the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, 14th November 2019, which have been circulated to members, be confirmed?
Aye. Aye.
There being no dissenting voice, the minutes hereby stand confirmed as circulated. Honorable members, is it your wish that the minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, 19th November 2019, which has been circulated to members, be confirmed?
Aye.
There being no dissenting voice, the minutes hereby stand confirmed as circulated. Honorable members, is it your desire that the minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, 3rd December 2019, which has been circulated, be so confirmed?
Aye.
There being no dissenting voice, the minutes hereby stand confirmed as circulated. Honorable members, I'd like to also say a special welcome to the students from the Inez Adams Primary School, who is also accompanied by their teacher, Ms. Sabaya O'Neill. And the public will know that Ms. O'Neill's mom served in this honorable house, and her dad was also the first cabinet secretary of the Virgin Islands. So we welcome and we're happy to have the students. I'm also pleased to report that the Youth Parliament Committee has been meeting, and we are having 2 training workshops scheduled for March, with a proposed launching date for the 30th of March 2020. So all the nominees will hear more about that as we proceed. And finally, the House of Assembly, as of this date, February 2020, has been reconstructed, where there are 9 members on the government side, 4 members on the opposition, still with 4 political parties. With that said, I call on the clerk. It's 4 political parties. I call on the clerk.
Item number 4, statements by ministers.
I call on the Premier and Minister of Finance and member for the 1st District, the Honorable Andrew A. Foy.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I crave your indulgence as I read a few statements. But before I start, Mr. Speaker, I also crave your indulgence to say welcome to our teacher and students of the Inez Adams Primary School, a primary school that's named after one of our stalwart educators who taught for many years in environments that were basically her home in different areas until it gets going. And I had the pleasure, Mr. Speaker, to speak with the class, and they really impressed me. I will ask them a few questions, and they were able to answer all of them accurately and promptly. I asked them if the name of their school. I couldn't think that they would get that wrong, and they didn't. And I asked them the name of their principal, and they got that correct. I asked them if they know the district the school is in. They told me that, of course, it's District 2, and they would know that because, District 2, they also said who's the representative. I asked them, they told me Honorable Mitch Stumble, my good little brother there, my good friend. And I also asked them if they know the Minister of Education. They told me Dr. the Honorable Natalia Whitley. And then I asked them if they know the Premier, and they smiled. And they said the Premier is Honorable Andrew A. Foy. And I spoke to one or two of them on one or two other areas, and it's just a pleasure to have you here today, both the teacher and the students. And remember that once you know that your future is in your hands, that with God's help, one of these days, some one of you will be here. And you will be able to receive the baton as we pray that we give it to you in a good condition, which is the territory, so you can carry on. So as Premier, I want to say welcome. And it is unconventional, Mr. Speaker. But before I do the statement, I think that with your kind permission, I should allow the leader of the opposition also to say a few words to the students, because we're going to do statements and we'll be there for a while. So, Mr. Speaker, can you please allow the leader of the opposition to give a few kind words and encouraging words to the students of the Enos Adams?
If it's the leader of opposition wish to say a word to the student, the permission is so granted.
Politician never misses the opportunity to speak, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Premier for the opportunity and you for granting me the opportunity, excuse me, to say a few words to these fine young people. I agree with the Premier that the future is yours, and I had the opportunity as well to speak to each one of you and introduce myself personally. And I think we have a good future ahead of us with these young people. Then what we're doing as a house in terms of allowing them the opportunity to be a part of the process, understand how the process works, is a good thing. And I think I commend the teacher who brought them here to us, and just the opportunity for us to engage the young people. We don't get the opportunity often enough to engage our young people on matters of state and matters of the country. And I think we have an opportunity now, Premier. I think they'll hear your statements and in the way we're going forward and how we conduct our business in this Honorable House. And I hope you learned something today. I know it's going to come up on your civic exam. I see I got a call from several students in my district asking me for an interview. I think it's a question on one of the thing about the members and trying to make sure that you're aware of your leaders in the country, and that's an important thing. So again, I thank you for coming. I thank you for engaging. I look forward to us going forward and engaging the young people of this territory. Thank you.
Thank you. Premier.
Thank the leader of the opposition, Mr. Speaker. And I want to let the teacher know that it is always good to be a teacher. I was one almost for 10 years. And it brings joy to my heart when I see the leader of the opposition, who was one student in high school in 4th and 5th, and a very, very bright young man. And now he's here keeping me on my toes and waiting until I retire to take over from this path also. So I want to thank him there. Mr. Speaker, I know it's very unconventional also, but as a leader of the territory, I think that it behoves us, if you so please, to allow the representative of the district where Enos Adams is housed, is located, to say a few words with due respect, because I do respect each district. And I do watch all of his videos, and I want him to know that I'm a big fan of his, and I'll be addressing all the issues one by one. So it would be one of the areas, Mr. Speaker, where I think is showing the young people respect, that the representative is in the House, they are from his area, and he'll be given an opportunity to address them. So, Mr. Speaker, with your kind permission, I crave your indulgence on that.
If there is a wish for the member for the second to speak, permission is so granted.
I so wish, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Premier for being vigilant and watching the videos, but he knows that his fight and his bellowing from this side when he was here about going into the districts is not an issue that I have with him, but I hope that he would educate and help his other members to understand, the plight that we face. But I want to especially welcome the students from the Enos Adams Primary School, grade 6 students, teacher Zubaida O'Neill and Principal Thomas. These students are very intelligent. They had their sports day on last week. I was there with them. So I know that this school is going in a good direction. I just want to ensure while I have this opportunity, the Premier gave it to me, so I'm going to take it, Mr. Speaker, that while we are talking about the school, and I know if we had some time to allow the students to speak, you know, they will lobby like me in some of the videos that I made, Mr. Speaker, to ensure that the school gets finished by the government. The science lab and the other areas of the school, make sure that we finish the parking lot area, the playground area, you know, so it's a more conducive environment. Because while we appreciate the donation from Mr. Haycraft, I think we have a job to do as the government to ensure that we complete the school so that the children can play in the playground, so they can have not just play on the rocks and the dirt, but also have a basketball court and a playground and the science lab and the library is put up. You know, all the things that we talk about every time I come there, you see they're shaking their head. So, Mr. Speaker, I welcome them, and I thank the Premier for giving me this opportunity to speak. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Honorable Premier.
Second, respect his input. It is his district. We are the government and with time, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, with my statements, I hope that I will find a way to help get some of the funding to get some of these things done. So I thank all the members, Mr. Speaker. I thought it was only right. Mr. Speaker, the first this first statement I have for today's proceedings is Mr. Speaker, my statement is titled, "Thank You, God." Mr. Speaker, I want to take this opportunity to thank God for keeping his guiding hands on this government, the unconventional government. In other words, we walk by faith and not by sight. This is what we mean by unconventional, God-led. We trust him and follow him. I thank God that in the midst of challenges, he helps us to see opportunities. In the midst of opportunities, he helps us to see breakthroughs. And in the midst of breakthroughs, he helps us to advance, develop, discover, and to leap and step forward. And for these bountiful blessings, the government of the people is thankful, because what we do is not for us, but for the people. So, Mr. Speaker, this morning I just want to thank God because as a government, we continue to be unconventional, innovative, accountable, and responsive, serving the best interests of the people of the Virgin Islands. When we started this journey on February 26, 2019, we started out with 8 members. Now we have 9 members, as we have welcomed the honorable member and representative for the 6th District, who took the leap of faith and pledged her support in the furtherance of the vision of transforming the Virgin Islands into a leading regional economy and to the uplifting of Virgin Islanders across the territory. Mr. Speaker, once again I say welcome to Honorable Alvar Maduro Keynes, who understood when I said during the budget address that the year 2020 is one of vision. Mr. Speaker, she saw it clearly. Now she is here sitting on the right side of history with the new Virgin Islands Party government. She has already hit the ground running and is doing her part in our overall pursuit of a resilient and a prosperous Virgin Islands. I thank God for all my colleagues on this side of the aisle for their unwavering commitment to each other, to the people and to me, as they do keep me as the Premier on my toes. I thank my colleagues on the other side of the aisle for keeping the foot of the government to the fire, because what this does is make us even more committed to doing only the will of God for the people and this territory in an accountable way. I thank public officers and other public officials for remaining committed to the task at hand. I know that many of them burn the midnight oil to prepare us for the next steps. I thank our families for standing by our sides as we push forward. I thank all the kingdom ambassadors, the prayer warriors, and members of the public who pray for us as a government collectively or individually, whether it is in their private or public space. I humbly thank them because we all know that when praises go up, the blessings come down. Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage us as a territory to continue to pray to the God of our forefathers that he may continue to bless and protect this territory as we work together to restore hope and prosperity for all. Come Thursday, February 26, 2020, will make 1 year since this unconventional government took office. We have done a lot in a short space of time with God's help. We have a lot more work to be done, and we are excited. Our forefathers built this territory forging ahead with what was in their hand, but their desire came from what was in their hearts, which was BVI love. The same love is what we must embrace to build the new BVI. Let us all therefore have love for our fellow men, love our economy, love for innovation, love for entrepreneurship, love for our territory. More importantly, let us remain committed to God for every blessing. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, I will now inform this Honorable House on the impact of the novel coronavirus outbreak on BVI overseas officers and employees. Mr. Speaker, I thank the Honorable Minister for Health and Social Development for his team, and his team for keeping the public informed about the status of the virus and how the territory is mitigating the risk associated with its outbreak. Mr. Speaker, I thought it important to provide an update on how our overseas officers and our overseas employees are coping with the outbreak and the measures we are taking to protect their well-being, particularly in our Hong Kong office. Mr. Speaker, the Premier's office and the Financial Services Commission maintain regular contact with our employees stationed in Hong Kong at our BVI House Asia, where the government and the Commission maintain offices. We conduct regular wellness checks to ensure that the employees are safe and to provide assistance any assistance they need. Since the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, the government of the Virgin Islands has strictly adhered to the recommendations and policies of the Hong Kong authorities to ensure the safety of the staff and office premises at BVI House Asia. This included following the recommendation for working remotely from home and the suspension of government services at our Hong Kong location, which expired on February 9th. Since February 10th, BVI House Asia continues to adhere strictly to the recommendations of the authorities by offering limited government services working out of office remotely and only entering the office 2 days in the week during non-peak travel times to conduct essential functions. Mr. Speaker, as recent as this week, Hong Kong's governing authorities have reimposed a closure of government office in lieu of remote services, strongly recommending the private sector to follow suit until the authorities issue new guidance. BVI House Asia will adhere strictly to the recommendations of the authorities, only entering the office at limited periods to access essential documents or services that cannot be accessed remotely. All precautions are being taken to ensure the safety and health of the staff and safety of the office premises. Employees are provided with private care services to avoid the usage of public transportation. Office access is undertaken only during non-peak hours. The Premier's office and the Financial Services Commission will continue to monitor the situation at BVI House Asia in Hong Kong and do all that is necessary to protect the health and well-being of our employees. Our overseas offices in USA and London at this time are not at any undue risk as a result of the novel coronavirus. I thank you. Mr. Speaker, as I continue to keep this Honorable House informed on matters that affect these beautiful British Virgin Islands, I wish now to update the House, Honourable House on Brexit through the lens of our economy. Mr. Speaker, on 31st January 2020 at 6 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, the United Kingdom, UK, officially left the European Union, EU. What this means in real terms is that the UK is no longer fully participating in the economic, social, political, and legal arrangements of the EU, which it has done for the past 47 years. The UK government will now be able to fully exercise its independence in making decisions for the UK across all critical areas of national life. Mr. Speaker, this is a most important development globally, but also has implications here at home. By virtue of the UK's membership in the EU, persons who hold UK passports, including DV Islanders, enjoy the benefit of visa-free travel to European Schengen area and the ability to work, study, and do business in the EU without restriction. However, these privileges are now up for negotiation as the UK and EU begin negotiations on their future relationship that will conclude by the end of the year. It is important to point out here that holders of British Overseas Territories passports fall under a different visa-free travel regime to the EU Schengen area that is unaffected by Brexit. The implications of Brexit on the BVI also extend to international relations and development cooperation. Politically, the BVI has enjoyed associate status in the EU as one of the overseas countries and territories, OCTs, directly associated with the bloc. Our associate status has entitled us to EU funding with which to tackle issues such as climate change, sustainable energy, and marine biodiversity, and also recovery after hurricanes Irma and Maria. Mr. Speaker, in earlier years, EU funds helped to build elements of the H. Lavity-Stowe Community College. Now, with the exit of Britain from the European Union, BVI no longer has associate status in the EU and no access to the next round of EU funding earmarked for the French, Dutch, and Danish territories we leave behind. This is very unfortunate since the BVI is eligible for little other development assistance. Fortunately, Mr. Speaker, no immediate changes to travel, study, business, work, and funding arrangements before the end of this year. An implementation period between the UK and EU from 1st February to 31st December has now come into force effective January 31st, 2020, which means that things will remain the same while the two parties negotiate the terms on which a new relationship will work. On this particular provision, I held discussions with the UK Minister for the Overseas Territories and other OT leaders to get clarifications and assurances on the implementation period and upcoming UK consultations with the overseas territories on their priorities for negotiations with the EU. It has been made clear to the UK that the BVI wishes to retain as many of the benefits and privileges that we currently enjoy with the EU, including visa-free travel and tariff and quota-free trade, among other things. In terms of replacement EU funding, your government has officially recommended to the UK that it create a sustainable development fund for all overseas territories from which to fund climate change, biodiversity, and sustainable energy projects. This is particularly important since the BVI is not eligible for funds elsewhere. Mr. Speaker, your government has also been clear with the UK that the BVI would like to explore opportunities for international trade presented by Brexit as the UK seeks out new trading partners. To ensure the BVI's voice is heard, I will travel to London in a few weeks to attend the upcoming UK OT Joint Ministerial Council, where I will reiterate our interests. As a government, we have also taken other steps to ensure the BVI maintains a relationship with the EU. They are as follows. The BVI London office will continue to serve as our EU representation office so that the BVI's voice can be heard when needed in various EU institutions and among individual EU member states. Central government will also remain fully engaged with the EU on critical issues such as the EU list of non-cooperative tax jurisdictions, of which the EU now recognizes the BVI as a fully compliant jurisdiction. We will also continue membership in the Overseas Countries and Territories Association, OCTA, OCTA, as an associate member to maintain a political presence in Brussels. It is more critical than ever that we work closely with our fellow French, Dutch, and Danish territories to lobby in the European Parliament and among other stakeholders where our interests are at stake. As a government, we have also recently engaged the EU on prospects for development cooperation as a third country jurisdiction, particularly as partners of the EU outermost regions in the Caribbean that include Guadeloupe, Martinique, Saint Martin, and French Guiana. We have a good track record of cooperation with these neighbors on sustainable development and will endeavor to continue partnering on projects. Finally, we have officially requested associate membership in CARIFORUM, which is the Caribbean's negotiating body on EU matters. In following up on this request, I met with my political colleagues in the region at the CARICOM inter-sessional meeting in Barbados. Once CARICOM associate membership is approved, we will begin to engage the EU on various matters involving trade and development alongside our Caribbean neighbors. This will also entail our London office attending the regular meetings of CARIFORUM ambassadors in Brussels. Mr. Speaker, these are uncertain times and certainly uncharted waters for the UK and EU. As your Premier Minister of Finance, I want to assure this Honourable House and the people of this territory that their government will continue to be vigilant in looking out for the best interests of the BVI as we navigate our way through the great changes taking place in Europe and the world today. I'll keep everyone informed as we make further progress on our international agenda. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's with pleasure I'd like to update this Honourable House on the European Union's blacklist of non-cooperative jurisdictions for tax purposes. In March 2019, the EU recognized the BVI as compliant with its fair taxation principles as well as being a cooperative jurisdiction. However, the BVI and 33 other jurisdictions were placed on the so-called grey list, a casual term used to refer to jurisdictions that are cooperative but where the EU has identified additional technical issues to be addressed. I instructed officials to continue positive engagement in discussions with EU officials, and as honourable members are no doubt aware, based on various pieces of legislation that have come to this Honourable House in the last quarter of last year, the BVI has spent the better part of 2019 in discussion with the EU about enhancements to our economic substance regime. The general requirement for BVI, common to other overseas territories of the Cayman Islands and Bermuda, were largely twofold. Firstly, we needed to put in place a regulatory regime for collective investment vehicles similar to the EU's regime. Secondly, we needed to have adopted economic substance rules that conform to language which the EU found to be satisfactory. Mr. Speaker, I stand here today very happy to confirm that BVI successfully met requirements and that these discussions with the EU have now been concluded. We thank God for his guiding hands on this territory. Mr. Speaker, with humility, I'm pleased to report to this Honourable House on February 18, 2020, the EU's finance ministers cleared the BVI, and now our jurisdiction is not on the blacklist and has been removed from the grey list. Thanks be to God. What a mighty God. I wish in this regard to thank my colleagues in this honorable House on both sides of the aisle for their continued cooperation and understanding. Most of all, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to my hard-working team of public officials who worked tirelessly to ensure that what was required to be done was indeed done, and done in a timely manner. That is why I always say that we must believe in the skills and the expertise of our people, and we must continue to give them the opportunity to soar. I'm proud of my people. They continue to serve us well. Mr. Speaker, the only reward for good work is more work. Honorable members, we will be aware that such reviews are now a regular feature in BVI's financial services landscape as we continue to meet the commitment of adhering to ever-changing global standards. I'm happy to say to this honorable House that much of the work on substance that began with the EU will now be taken forward by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, known as the OECD, the international standard setting body in financial services and economic affairs. In concluding, I therefore wish to again express thanks to my colleagues for their continued support on these matters. This is a significant outcome, and for us it sends a very important message about good governance, transparency, and accountability in the British Virgin Islands. Mr. Speaker, to this milestone, I say to God be all the glory for what great things he has done for the people of the Virgin Islands. I thank you. Mr. Speaker, I will now turn to what we are doing as a territory to build the BVI's energy sector. I want to assure that its contents is committed into the minutes of this honorable House so that honorable members are aware, because building the solar energy sector will require the commitment of all of us working together, moving together, one as a hand, building this economy district by district. You would recall that alternative energy was one of the key issues on which my team campaigned for the 2009 general elections. We promised that if you give us the opportunity, we would make alternative energy not just a conversation, but a commodity to households across our territory. The impact on our electricity supply caused by Hurricane Irma in 2017 reminds us of the fragility of traditional sources of energy. The exorbitant cost to restore adequate energy supply to our communities highlights the need for us to create sustainable energy sources using innovative technologies while driving a cleaner environment. At a time when the territory's revenue supply is threatened, alternative energy is a gateway to provide meaningful employment, additional revenue streams, and foster citizen participation in building the BVI's energy sector. Mr. Speaker, our grid must be made more resilient. It is time for alternative sources of energy to be part of the process that drives our economy forward. This was the case that we put to you as we asked for your support 11 months ago. Immediately upon taking office, your government hit the ground running to deliver on this promise. Over the last 11 months, through tireless work, we have made significant progress towards our green vision, and a number of initiatives are presently in train. Our aim is to be 60% green by 2030 or before. Within the first month of your government's tenure, the BVI Electricity Corporation, BVI-EC, was mandated to take a leading role in driving the territory's transition to green energy sources. Solar and wind energy are free to us as gifts from God. The BVI Electricity Corporation, BVI-EC, within the first month of your government's term, launched its Green Energy Initiative, in which residents wishing to install distributed generation renewable energy were encouraged to either download the small-scale renewable energy connection from BVI-EC's website, bvielectricity.com, or to obtain hard copy applications at the BVI-EC branches located at Longbush Road Town and the Valley Virgin Gorda. Mr. Speaker, in the 2020 budget address, you would recall, I announced that there would be zero tax on the import of clean energy systems such as solar and wind power generation equipment, hybrid vehicles, and conversion of vehicles to liquefied propane gas (LPG) for a period of 1 year. Also announced that there would be a comprehensive mechanism for private citizens who generate their own electricity to earn revenue by selling power back to the national grid. By the end of 2020, instead of you paying BVI EC for electricity, it can be the other way around if you go green. This is how your young new government has been working for you. I want to urge citizens to make the most of these incentives because the financial and environmental benefits to individuals and to the territory as a whole are tremendous and lucrative. While we encourage citizens to adopt green and smart technology and habits, your government is also leading the way. We have mandated that all government infrastructures must also be green and smart. Mr. Speaker, as I speak, we are on the way to making Anegada the first island in the Virgin Islands to generate its own electricity. BVI Electricity Corporation is rolling out a project to create a microgrid powered by solar energy using solar photovoltaic PV technology and battery storage. This microgrid will assist with reducing the number of resources needed to run the energy plant on Anegada. One of the complications with the present system in getting fuel to Anegada to run the power plant, and this affects the reliability of electricity supply on the island. The Anegada microgrid will provide a solution to that problem and improve the comfort of our people. Last November, a solar power system was installed in the Youth Empowerment Project YEP building in East End through a partnership involving BVI EC and a BVI-based renewable energy company, ATEC. This is a grid-tied system and is helping BVI EC to develop the policies, systems, and regulations for our transformation of the energy sector, including the introduction of net billing for customers to sell excess power to the grid. Affordable, reliable, and accessible electricity power for all residents and visitors throughout the length and breadth of the Virgin Islands will give us the competitive advantage we need to achieve our territory's vision of transforming it into a leading regional economy by 2025 through innovation, entrepreneurship, and local and foreign investment. Affordable and reliable, accessible electricity power is one of the base resources for a digitally and technologically driven economy. Mr. Speaker, that is one of the mantras of my administration, that our Virgin Islands people must be able to participate in the economic opportunities from all development activity, especially in the area of job creation. In order to prepare our people for jobs in our new green energy industry, your government has successfully sealed a partnership involving the Premier's Office, British Virgin Islands Electricity Corporation, BVIEC, Power 52, and the Aged Adventist Community College to train youth across all 9 districts in the installation of renewable energy systems. This training program was launched last month. It is yet another promise delivered by your new government. Mr. Speaker, graduates of this program will move into employment in the BVI's green energy industry, complementing our 1,000 jobs in 1,000 days program, which is doing well through the support of the private sector and other stakeholders to place Virgin Islanders in stable, meaningful careers so that they can take care of their families and personal obligations and achieve their aspirations. Your government and our partners are equipping Virgin Islanders to thrive and to be resilient in the competitive global technological era that defines the world today and in the future. To explain the financial implications of going green for the people, for the BVI people and the territory's economy. All fossil fuel consumed in the BVI is imported from other countries. The average base cost of fossil fuel over the past 5 years is $2.18 per gallon. I'm advised that the average consumption of fossil fuel in the BVI is presently 1 million gallons per month. Therefore, the BVI consumes $2.18 million in fossil fuel per month at base cost. That is $26.16 million per year and $130.8 million over 5 years. That is leaving our shores to enrich other countries and other economies. Put another way, the BVI people and our economy loses $26.16 million every year by importing fossil fuel. As our economy grows, our fuel consumption will grow even further beyond the 1 million gallons per month. And this means even more money will be leaving our shores. Green energy is free. Thus, by reducing our fossil fuel consumption by 60%, we can reduce the leakage by about $15.7 million per year, based on the current usage and prices. That would be savings for the people of the Virgin Islands of $78.5 million over the next 5 years. Compressed natural gas, CNG, and LPG are cleaner and cheaper fuels. Therefore, there will be even further savings and benefits for the BVI people when we switch to CNG and LPG for the remaining 40% of our fuel needs. This is money that can remain in the pockets of Virgin Islanders, or money which you, the people, can spend on other things such as improving your homes and properties, buying food, or educating and caring for your children, or you can put that into your savings. That is money that can strengthen the BVI's economy instead of some other country's economy. Mr. Speaker, imagine the possibilities for you and your family if we can stop sending these millions of dollars abroad and instead utilize it to improve your quality of life. Mr. Speaker, imagine the amount of pollution we can cut down on by reducing the consumption of dirty fossil fuel by 60% or more. We can do it, and together we will do it by transitioning away from fossil fuel and into green energy with you, the people, at the center of it all, participating, saving, earning, and preserving, and protecting our natural environment. This government is pressing forward to meet our green energy targets so that the people of the BVI can prosper. To ensure that this is done properly and in a timely manner, we will be, in short order, soliciting the services of an energy expert to work between the Premier's office and the British Virgin Islands Electricity Corporation BVIEC board so that our green energy transformation is a success. Through these initiatives, the BVI's green initiative industry is lifting off and is set to grow, bringing benefits for the people of the BVI. This government intends to commence a series of public awareness meetings in March 2020 to educate the population on how they can participate in our green economy and how you can go about accessing the benefits and incentives of our green initiatives. I also wish to state for the benefit of the business community and investors that the government of the Virgin Islands is open to receiving unsolicited proposals on how we can create partnership that will assist us in achieving our vision to the benefit of all. Mr. Speaker, you would recall that during the 2019 election campaign, my team and I promised that if you give us the opportunity, we would make alternative energy not just a conversation, but a commodity to households across our territory. You can see that we are doing exactly that. This is what your government promised the people, and this is what we are working tirelessly to deliver now. Our achievements and strides as this government stand as testimony to our commitment to honoring our pledges to the people for the trust that they have reposed in us. Mr. Speaker, this government is aware that the confidence of the people of this territory is well placed in us to move in the direction of preserving these islands. I thank you.
What is your point of information, member for the fourth?
On the subject of the last statement. Mr. Speaker, I fully support the Premier's statement and the direction he's going with the renewable energy subject, which is very important for this territory. But it would be remiss of me, Mr. Speaker, to not to ask the Premier to give some credit to the previous government and what we have done in delivering the legislation on this matter and delivering our regulations to allow renewable energy to thrive in the way that we think it should. In our initial stage, we hired a consultant, we prepared legislation, we passed regulation. The credit must be given to the Electricity Corporation leaders and the
Member for
chairman.
the Fort. So your point of information is to ask the Premier to give credit to your administration.
And I'm making a point of information. I'm giving the information. I'm not being a student, I'm giving the information, Mr. Speaker, in the House. On a point of information, Mr. Speaker, I would say that this is what happened to lay the groundwork for what is happening then. I just want my good Premier to give some credit to the past government for all the work we have done. There's a lot of work that was done to prepare us to this point. Thank you, Mr. Premier. Mr. Speaker.
Premier, do you have a response?
How many points you get? Mr. Speaker, I'm always amazed when I hear the opposition get up for what is good and say, don't forget them, and when it's not good, they say, it is you. But Mr. Speaker, of course the past government did some work on it, and the member has given himself the credit, and I would tell him thanks for whatever you have done. And Mr. Speaker, remember the last sitting, we were told that a lot of things what we were talking were in train. So what we are doing now is getting the train moving since the train was only in train. But whatever was done before, because we didn't just come and meet these things, there's a lot of things we came and met and we built on, and some of them we couldn't build on, and some we started new. So if you feel that I did not do that intentionally, I do apologize. It's a lesson to our young people that we must give credit where credit is due. And I expect that when you get up at another time, you'll give us credit for all we have done. Too good. But this is not about credit, it's about the people.
Yes.
So you will be around when we make and gather fully renewable. And we have these other things going. So no problem at all. Mr. Speaker, for the record, I give the former government credit for all they have done up to this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The record will so note. We will, Minister, for, you have more statement, Premier?
Just a few more.
Oh, okay.
I could have finished the last one, but, yes.
Continue, sir.
Yes, okay. We will see on this one now. Mr. Speaker, I take this opportunity to inform this honorable House of the deposit insurance policy that your government intends to implement in 2020. I didn't hear any interruption there. Okay. The implementation of this policy will bring long overdue protection and relief to all Virgin Islanders and residents. It will breathe life into legislation that was passed in the House of Assembly, which has been laying in a state of suspended animation for the past 4 years. The Virgin Islands Deposit Insurance Act 2016 brought to establish the Virgin Islands Deposit Insurance Corporation and Deposit Insurance Fund for the purpose of providing protection to depositors, especially those who some may describe as small and unsophisticated, as they are not in a position to assess the risk of the institution in which they may put their hard-earned savings. The full establishment of the corporation and fund would meet the international requirements and address the recommendations found in the Michael Foot Report of 2009 and the International Monetary Fund Financial Sector Assessment Program, FSAP, in 2010. A deposit insurance scheme would assist in achieving and maintaining confidence in the stability of deposit-taking institutions and in reducing the probability of contagious deposit runs on these institutions, which could jeopardize the health of the financial system as a whole if such an instance were to occur. Establishment of such a scheme would provide your government, in conjunction with the supervisory and regulatory authorities, with a more formal mechanism for dealing with problem financial institutions, with a view to protecting depositors and their funds. The scheme will therefore replace discretion with an established legal regime, thus allowing for a faster and more consistent administrative process. This policy will allow the government and the relative authorities to have an avenue to pursue recourse for citizens in certain circumstances where otherwise they would have had no options. Our territory boasts of a relatively stable banking sector. Not too long ago, in 2007, 2008, the world was shaken by the global financial crisis. Currently, there are 5 banks operating in the BVI as a subsidiary or a branch. This leaves the territory banking institution more susceptible to external forces in such a crisis. Since the passage of the Act, the Ministry of Finance has been tasked with the development of subsidiary legislation and resolution powers to support the Act. Mr. Speaker, identifying individuals who possess the expertise in this specialized area have proven to be elusive, and as a result, the Ministry of Finance has been having difficulties sourcing such a specialist that can address the legal requirements required to develop a framework of establishing a DIC. Through persistence and dedication to task, your government was able to enter into a consultancy contract with Ms. Vilma Rosa Leon York to provide the necessary legal and resolution framework for a cutting-edge deposit insurance corporation known as DIC. Ms. Leon York is a practitioner and an advisor in both legal and resolution framework fields for over 15 years, providing technical assistance globally and comes to us highly recommended. She has provided technical assistance on the establishment and of reforming of deposit insurance schemes and resolution frameworks, and on the management of financial system-related events. The work is expected to take approximately 928 hours or 24 weeks to complete over a 1-year period. Simultaneously, your government will be instituting the board which will commence the other logistical works required for the proper operation of the corporation as its board. I take this opportunity to inform this Honorable House that it is your government's intention for the Virgin Islands Deposit Insurance Corporation to be implemented before 1st January 2021. This would give the financial institutions sufficient time to make the necessary preparations and for full compliance with the referenced legislation. The records will show that banks operating in the BVI have been quite profitable over the years, and at the same time not offering any protection to depositors. We are operating in a global environment, and if the BVI is to remain competitive, our banking institutions must keep pace. We have been operating by faith through the rigorous oversight by the Financial Services Commission to secure our deposits. May I say that such ideology and practice are no longer sufficient in the 21st century. Deposit insurance is not new to many of the banks operating in the BVI because they are required to offer such protection to their customers in other jurisdictions in which they operate. Such protection must therefore be offered to the people and business of the BVI. Mr. Speaker, I will be following this progress closely. I shall report to this Honorable House on our achievements towards the establishment of the Virgin Islands Deposit Insurance Corporation as we proceed. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, I will now focus on giving an update on the state of our tourism industry. Our tourism industry continues to surge as evidenced by official reports from the Government Central Statistics Office, which note increases of arrivals year over year since the hurricanes of 2017. According to those reports, we are once again approaching the levels of 2016, where we saw record numbers of over 1.1 million visitors, exactly 1 million, 324,384 to be exact. 380, sorry, to be exact. In 2019, we had 894,991 visitor arrivals. This represents 79% of our 2016 total arrival numbers. We are now sitting at 1,606 land-based rooms, which represents 59% of our pre-storm inventory. On the marine side, we have about 4,400 berths on boats, which exceed our pre-storm capacity. With the reopening of the flagship property, Rosewood Little Licks Bay, in January, the anticipated reopening of Peter Island Resort and Mosquito Island, together with Bitter End Yacht Club returning to its sailing routes when it reopens its first phase of redevelopment this summer, there is much to be excited and optimistic about. Mr. Speaker, as we forge forward with the BVI's digital economy, we are ensuring that tourism remains relevant and does not lag behind in this area. The BVI Tourist Board will shortly select a firm to develop a new and enhanced website for launching by the fourth quarter of this year. The board is also in the process of selecting a firm to provide digital internet services for visitors throughout the territory. But perhaps the most recent and exciting news is that of the launching of the BVI Now app. This app, described by some as the Yellow Pages on steroids, is designed to quickly connect our guests with a myriad of tourism businesses. The app utilizes the latest technologies enabling guests to access local businesses and maps, and it is able to do this without internet connection. News of the app's launch is quickly garnering international attention in the travel, trade, and consumer media. In advancing its mandate, the Tourist Board is desirous of providing mobile and hotspot Wi-Fi services as a key marketing tool that will enhance the tourism experience for cruise visitors, day tours, and stay-over visitors in the BVI. The Tourist Board is therefore soliciting proposals from qualified consulting firms to develop a wireless network strategic plan with a near-term focus on Wi-Fi development in key tourist sites and hire vehicles, and a long-term consideration of other wireless technologies, wireless network. The preferred consultant must demonstrate prior experience working with government agencies or statutory bodies in developing plans to build wireless broadband networks. The plan would be used to strategically develop the Tourist Board's wireless telecommunication infrastructure to meet the needs of its target audience. The successful responder would utilize the plan and work on the Tourist Board's behalf to construct, manage, and leverage certain Tourist Board assets and telecommunication infrastructure with third parties. Mr. Speaker, the British Virgin Islands have once again received validation and international travelers and the media that we are still a top-of-mind travel destination. The accolades signifying this vote of confidence include: BVI was named the #2 place to visit in the New York Times 52 places to go in 2020. 2 BVI bars, Soggy Dollar Bar and Hendo's Hideout, were voted #1 and #4 respectively for USA Today's 10 Best Readers' Choice Awards for Best Caribbean Beach Bar. The British Virgin Islands won the Hospitality Sales and Marketing Association International HSMAIA Platinum Adrian Award for its digital marketing campaign, Today's Secrets. We also won the Gold Adrian Award for Public Relations for the Travel plus Leisure magazine cover story, The British Virgin Islands' Impressive Comeback. The recent signing of an agreement with International Luxury Travel Consortium Travel Made is an added validation of the territory's re-emergence on the luxury travel scene. Traveler Made, like BVI's other strategic travel consortia partnerships such as Vortosio and Signature, is a network of luxury travel agents dedicated to providing unique and exclusive bespoke journeys to travelers looking for different and original experiences. The film industry has demonstrated renewed confidence in the BVI as a location with several projects shot on location here, including the acclaimed PBS television travel show, Samantha Brown Places to Love, to name a few of the projects that were showcased on many of the sites in the territory. The idea is to always promote the BVI activities that are available for enjoyment in the territory and promote the BVI as both an exhilarating tourism destination and a very versatile and attractive location for filming. Mr. Speaker, while the tourist board industry partners have led the resurgence of the BVI on the international travel scene, we cannot rest on our laurels. We must continue to find ways to enhance our tourism products and services. While my government plans to train persons for the hospitality training in hospitality industry, while my government plans to train persons for the hospitality industry continues through initiatives such as the Back to the Sea program to train persons for the marine, the tourist board continues to offer free customer service training for all visitor-facing personnel, along with service standards training in collaboration with the Disney Institute. As well, Mr. Speaker, in terms of culinary and other service and quality training, the government of the Virgin Islands will be working with the HLSCC to improve the facilities that they have in the current campus at Paraquita Bay, and also seek to get other campus for such training on Virgin Gorda. As a government, we continue our relentless pursuit of improving accessibility, utilizing a variety of regional hubs, including Puerto Rico, USVI, St. Martin and Antigua, and most recently, Punta Cana in the Dominican Republic. Our government is constantly enhancing the tourism product with improvements at the ports of entry and projects carried out by the BVI Tourist Board, including the installation of lookouts and branded hammocks at strategic points throughout the territory, among others. Mr. Speaker, lastly, one product-related initiative launched by the BVI Tourist Board following the 2017 storms, called Seeds of Love, has not only helped to replant trees throughout the territory, but has created a tremendous outpouring of generosity and goodwill among our guests and the community. The involvement of our guests in this replanting effort is the essence of volunteerism. Mr. Speaker, the aforementioned and other developments fuel my enthusiastic optimism for the sustainable future of tourism, not only in the long term, but right now. And Mr. Speaker, I must thank our director, Mr. Speaker, Ms. Sharon Flax-Brutus, for the hard work she has done. I must thank, Mr. Speaker, her team at the Tourist Board, and, Mr. Speaker, the board of the Tourist Board, Mr. Speaker. I must thank Mrs. Sproul, and I must thank my junior ministers, Mr. Speaker, Honorable Shireen Flax-Charles, and now the junior minister, Honorable Sherry De Castro, Mr. Speaker, because without them working hand in glove, Mr. Speaker, tourism product could not be where it is. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Board of Directors of BVI Airports Authority, BVIAA, has developed a vision to ensure that the air service delivery to the territory is both enhanced and increased, which ties into the overall vision of the government of the Virgin Islands. Since the beginning of 2020, the board, together with the management and staff of the authority, has been working tirelessly to ensure that its vision bears fruits during the 2020 calendar year. They have been working to build capacity and revenue generation capability, improve service delivery, and to increase the airlift access for Virgin Islanders, residents, and visitors. This will greatly enhance the inbound and outbound logistics for tourism and business sectors, upon which our 2020 budget and medium to long-term vision is premised. Permit me to provide an update on the work that has been done by the BVI Airports Authority and the authority's plans since my last report to this honorable house in December last year. The first heading, Mr. Speaker, is new systems and initiatives. The BVI Airports Authority continues to strive towards self-reliance with the continued implementation of a number of initiatives geared towards improving reliability of systems, improving revenue streams, reducing losses, and improving regulatory compliance. The new systems and initiatives include 1, implementation of the in-transit lounge, 2, imminent completion of the CIP lounge, 3, lifting of the single engine restriction at the Teddy Bay International Airport and Virgin Gorda, 4, emergency response training, 5, imminent implementation of the EASE system, 6, the purchase of 2 Oshkosh fire appliances, and 7, implementation of maintenance tracking software. 138 passengers. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, 138 passengers have used the in-transit lounge since it was opened on 1st February 2020. It has been operating smoothly with no reported hitches or security breaches. Mr. Speaker, this is a classic example of the BVI Airport Authority making maximum use of what they already have to increase the authority's revenue generation without heavy spending. And for this initiative, the board and management of the BVI Airports Authority must be commended. The authority repurposed a previously utilized space to create this in-transit lounge. With growing frequency, airlines are using our airport at Beef Island as a transit hub to other Caribbean airports. Air passengers who are transiting through the TB Lettsome International Airport to catch connecting flights to their final destination in other countries will utilize this facility to make their connections. The transiting passengers are charged a $10 levy, which is attached to the cost of their ticket. Airline operators are already indicating that the in-transit lounge is impacting positively on the experience of transiting passengers, and this will encourage growth in this aspect of our airport business. Further improvements to cover the walkway leading up to the lounge are planned to better cater to in-transit passengers during, for example, adverse weather conditions. The CIP lounge is 95% complete and is expected to open its doors to the public on 15 March 2020. The space has amenities such as a minibar, conference room, and seating for up to 21 persons, and is part of the BVI Airports Authority's drive to improve the product at the Terence B. Lettsome International Airport. Again, the BVI Airports Authority has repurposed previously underutilized space to create this revenue-earning facility. Passengers who desire to use the CIP lounge will pay a fee to use it. Lounges of this type are common features in most modern airports. They improve passenger experience and significantly boost revenue. Since 3rd February 2020, BVI Airports Authority has been conducting training with PAHO in emergency care and treatment, mass casualty management, and incident command. 75 persons have been trained in these areas from the Air Traffic Service Unit, Operations Department, Security Unit, Rescue and Fighting Unit. Members of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force are also taking part in the training. The training will be used to jumpstart a complete review of the BVI Airports Authority's emergency response procedures to ensure that current techniques are relevant and effective. Work has begun at the Oshkosh facility in Wisconsin, USA, on 2 new fire appliances. We expect that the Oshkosh Global Strikers will arrive in BVI in December 2020. This will also improve the safety at our airport and prevent interruption in operation as occurred last year due to the condition of our aged units. At the end of January, BVI Airports Authority installed new maintenance software for Prodigy, a company based in Silicon Valley, California. The software is being used to better track maintenance issues at the airport and the time and resources needed to fix them. This data will then be used to determine where resources need to be allocated or what equipment needs to be replaced to reduce the maintenance issues at the aerodrome. By being able to identify and track maintenance and to take a preventative maintenance approach, the BVI Airports Authority will be able to save cost and improve operating efficiency while improving our customer service. BVI Airports Authority is working with Amadeus to install a new check-in system in the upcoming weeks. The new system will allow the airport to be able to accommodate more airlines at once. It will also help current airlines to expand or reduce the amount of ticket counters that they use depending on the volume of passengers being checked in. One of the main benefits of this improvement is that it will allow airlines to more efficiently check in passengers, reduce the time passengers spend standing in line, and giving them more time to patronize the concessionaries' businesses. The next area is lifting of single engine restriction at Virgin Gorda Airport. A single engine aircraft restriction was placed on Virgin Gorda Airport by the then Director of Civil Aviation, DCA, Mr. Basil Fleming, in 1964. That's before I was born. And remained in effect since. High crosswinds associated with operations into the airport was identified as the primary reason why single-engine operations were not allowed. Following conversations with the regulator, Air Safety Support International, ASSI, as well as an in-house assessment by the authority's operation team, a decision was made to lift the restriction following a request by Tropic Ocean Airways to operate flights into Virgin Gorda. On the instructions of the regulators, a series of familiarizations test flights were conducted on 5th February 2020 to determine if, in fact, the aircraft and crew were capable of operating into the airport. Mr. Cleo Hodge, an FAA designated examiner and pilot well versed with the aerodrome and its operations, was selected to conduct the flights. Mr. Hodge confirmed that he was satisfied with the competence of the flight crew and the performance of the aircraft. The board of directors held an emergency meeting with a resolution where a resolution was approved to allow for the accountable manager to put the necessary measures in place to have the restrictions on a single engine aircraft operations into Virgin Gorda Airport lifted. The resolution also instructed the accountable manager to liaise directly with the insurance provider to ensure that the requisite insurance coverage is in place for single engine operations. The BVI Airports Authority expects that at least one other carrier will be added to the list of approved carriers that operate into the airport as a result of the restriction being lifted by the end of March 2020. The next heading, Mr. Speaker, is paving of Virgin Gorda Runway. With respect to the paving of the runway at the Virgin Gorda Airport, the authority published an RFP request for proposal for the solicitation of companies for this work. The paving of the runway will expand the scope of aircraft that currently use the aerodrome, which could make flights from the U.S. mainland to Virgin Gorda a reality. The chairman of the BVI Ports Authority, along with the chairman of the BVI Tourist Board and the managing director, have commenced meetings with 2 airlines currently operating in the territory to ascertain which additional routes can be had as a result of the runway being paved. The board is also actively considering the renaming of the Virgin Gorda Airport after a deserving Virgin Gordian to commemorate the enhancements to the airport subsequent to the paving of the runway, of course, with the public's input. A matrix will be developed going forward to select a person to whom the honor will be bestowed. It must be noted that the other two airports in the territory are named after deserving citizens. The next headline, Mr. Speaker, updating with the BVI Airports Authority is night flights, Augustus, George, and Igata. Night flights are still not allowed in the August George International Airport in Anegada, but we expect to lift this restriction in the very near future, further opening up the potential for economic opportunities on the sister island. The roadmap for resumption of these flights has been developed, and the required improvements have been identified or procured, but are not yet in place. These are 1, backup generator, 2, additional runway lights, 3, airport beacon, 4, staff training in night operations. Based on the established timeline, the completion of the changes agreed with the regulator will not be completed until April. The delay is due largely to the arrival of runway lights from Belgium. Once these upgrades are completed, it will significantly increase the airlift opportunities to Anegada and increase connectivity to the sister island, facilitating increased volume of visitor arrivals, and this will benefit the hotel's earning opportunities for taxi drivers and tour guides and create additional jobs due to increased demand for services in Anegada. Mr. Speaker, as coming to a close, the Caribbean Airlines, an 8-member team from Caribbean Airlines CAL visited the BVI from 29 January to 1st February 2020 on a fact-finding tour with a view to exploring expansion of their network to include Tortola using their ATR fleet. The first stop on the tour witnessed a presentation of their intention to the Honorable Premier of the Virgin Islands, the Financial Secretary, the Board of Directors of the BVI Airports Authority, and other key stakeholders essential to realizing operations in the territory. Discussions are ongoing between CAL and the various government agencies and key stakeholders, including the BVI Airports Authority, as the airline has indicated it must take into consideration the regulatory framework and requirements of the respective territories. May I say that this is a positive step in our mission to improve airlift access for Virgin Islanders, residents, and visitors. Through the grace of God, your government and the BVI Airports Authority are optimistic that our efforts to improve the territory's airlift access will be successful. Mr. Speaker, in terms of LIAT, interest in the BVI as a market and as a connection hub for air travel is very high, given your government's vision as expressed in the 2020 budget address. On 22nd January 2020, a 2-member delegation from LIAT met with the Board of Directors of the BVI Airports Authority to discuss the airline's continuing relationship with the BVI. One of the areas discussed was that of the BVI being able to advise LIAT on preferred routes that we wish for LIAT to operate. The board at that meeting advised LIAT that they are interested in a route between Beef Island and San Juan, along with the reintroduction of the overnight flight from Beef Island. LIAT has promised to investigate both requests and report to the board. Mr. Speaker, in terms of the hangar services are a lucrative source of aeronautical revenue for airports. The BVI Airports Authority is moving to capitalize on this opportunity. The AVIA NG Airport consultants have been contracted to redesign the hangar layout at Beef Island. They are on track to submit their preliminary draft report on 28 February 2020, at which point the design will be reviewed and the completed draft will be resubmitted shortly thereafter. Phase 1 of this work has been completed. This includes the following data collection and fieldwork tasks. 1, collect and review background information. 2, project kickoff and initiation meeting. 3, site inspection and visual assessment. 4, geotechnical investigation and report. and 5, site topography. Phase 2 is in progress as follows. 1, pavement design and recommendation 75% complete. 2, preliminary design 75% complete. Construction cost estimates initiated, and 4, preliminary design report initiated. After completion and costing of the plan, a decision will then be made as to the method of financing the project. Hong's Land in Beef Island. Mr. Speaker, permit me to take this closing moment and this opportunity to say a few words on the issue of the so-called Hong lands, as I know this is a matter that many persons are interested in. On April 24, 1995, a non-belongers landholding license was granted to Coram Island BVI Limited, a private limited liability company under the signature of the then Governor Peter Alfred Penfold, for 5 parcels of land situated at Beef Island, Bellamy Key, and the Little Key, totaling about 669 acres. The deed was registered at the land registry on 10th July 1995. The license was for the development of a 5-star hotel and a first-class 18-hole golf course on the said lands, subject to conditions as follows. 1, subject to planning approval, a capital outlay of at least $10.7 million was to be spent to complete all elements of the first phase of the development project within 5 to 7 years from the grant of the license. 2, the golf course will be constructed on Beef Island at a cost of $3 million to $5 million during the first phase, and the timetable for construction will be subject to the availability of water in the area. 3, work would commence within 1 year from the grant of the license. 4, the license is not transferable and is operative only by Coram Island BVI Limited. 5, the land cannot be subdivided, sold, or otherwise disposed of without the prior written approval of the governor. It is a fact that no such development was done on the said island, on said lands. The BVI Airports Authority has appointed a special committee to negotiate the reacquisition of the property. The committee has begun discussions with representatives of Mr. Hong towards this purpose. Discussions are ongoing and at a sensitive stage. I'll provide this Honorable House with further details as the matter progresses. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, by increasing the airlift capacity, passenger experience, and passenger volume, we will increase the economic opportunities for our Virgin Islands people, from our hotels and bed and breakfast providers, to our food and catering, bars, taxi drivers, and tour operators, so that they can earn more money to provide for themselves and their families. Mr. Speaker, I want to sincerely congratulate and thank the BVI Airports Authority Board, management, and staff for their hard work, the benefits of which will rebound to the benefit of Virgin Islanders for a long time to come. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You might want to take the break now for the young people.
Sure. Okay, Premier, thank you for your statement, and you'll sure. Honorable members, I just want to humbly and politely remind you of Standing Order 43C. So I'll give you a chance to read that in your spare time. We will take a 15-minute break, that's 1-5, and then we'll resume where the Premier and Leader of Government Business will continue with his statement. This House is now in recess. Please be seated. This honorable House now resumes its sitting. We're going to move away now for a short while from the Premier, and we'll move to the next Minister for his statement. I therefore recognize the Deputy Premier and Minister for Health and Social Development. Well, the Premier was having some technical difficulties with his other statements, pages missing, etc. So, therefore, we'll move to the next Minister. I take it that the Deputy Premier has statements. Okay. Therefore, I recognize the Deputy Premier and Minister for Health and Social Development and Territorial Member, the Honorable Carvin Malone.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I too would like to wish all members Happy New Year, being the first sitting for the year 2020. 2020. Mr. Speaker, I would like to crave your indulgence in 4 relatively short statements.
Okay.
First, on the coronavirus disease. Second, on non-communicable disease programs. Third, on the Housing Recovery Assistance Program. And last, on the Nurse Iris O'Neill Medical Center on Virgin Gorda.
Okay.
Can I go now? Okay. Mr. Speaker, coronaviruses are a group of viruses that can cause mild to moderate upper respiratory tract illnesses like the common cold that can progress to more severe and fatal infections such as severe acute respiratory syndrome. As a group, coronaviruses are common across the world. At the end of 2019, new strains of coronavirus was detected in Wuhan City, China, and later named coronavirus disease 2019, or COVID-19. This was named by the World Health Organization, WHO. On January 30th, 2020, the WHO declared the COVID-19 a public health emergency of international concern. It is not yet clear how easily COVID-19 spreads from person to person. However, from studying previous human coronaviruses, example, the SARS and MERS, it is known that they typically spread through the air by coughing and sneezing, and the incubation period is 2 to 14 days before signs of the disease is evident. Typical signs and symptoms of COVID-19 include fever and a cough that may progress to severe pneumonia, causing shortness of breath and breathing difficulties. Generally, most severe symptoms occur in persons with weakened immune systems, older people, and those with long-term conditions like diabetes, cancer, and chronic lung disease. Currently, there is no specific treatment or antiviral drug available for COVID-19. Supportive treatment is provided based on the patient's clinical condition. Although severe or several organizations are currently working on a COVID-19 vaccine, it is quite possible that the vaccine might not be ready in time to combat this epidemic. As such, the Ministry of Health and Social Development continues to closely monitor the outbreak of the respiratory illness caused by this virus.
the Ministry of Health and Social Development, Mr. Speaker, has adopted a multifold approach to reduce the risk of the possible impact of COVID-19. Mr. Speaker, under the leadership of the Chief Medical Officer, the Public Health and Environmental Department units have been closely monitoring the situation and working with international, regional, and local partners to respond to this emerging public health threat. On January 24, 2020, an emergency surveillance meeting was held with local health officials and healthcare providers to discuss updates on the virus, protocols, responses, and protective measures. On the same day, the BVI issued travel guidance for China, recommending that travelers avoid all non-essential travel to all of the affected countries. Level 2 travel health notice was issued. On Tuesday, 28 January 2020, the Ministry of Health activated the Quarantine Authority to better provide ongoing support to the COVID-19 response. Going forward, there will be increased screening at all ports of entry to detect possible cases and distribute material to all arriving passengers. Port officials will monitor travelers and those with symptoms compatible with COVID-19 infection will be referred to the BVI Health Services Authority for evaluation. At the same time, all arriving passengers who have traveled to China and other affected countries within the last 14 days are to be given a travel health alert notice and be subject to health surveillance and isolation. Through intense inquiry by immigration officers, they will be required to fill out a questionnaire about their travel, possible signs and symptoms, and contact information. Persons showing signs and symptoms or a respiratory infection with travel history with an affected country will be quarantined and subjected to further screening and testing. The use of thermal imaging technology will be implemented at the ports to facilitate detection of cases. Non-contact handheld thermometers or non-contact handheld thermometers will be used to check passengers' temperature to determine if they have a fever. Enhanced monitoring and surveillance will assist the ministry with tracking disease trend, forecasting spread, investigating cases, and ensuring that the public, including travelers, get the right information about what to do if they become ill. Enhance health services preparedness and response measures in relation to the threat. Provisions of timely, accurate educational material to the public and widespread hygiene promotion using various channels and targeted media to reach multiple communities. Increased local multi-sectorial collaboration is data sharing and training of personnel. For example, healthcare professionals have received advice concerning initial detection and investigation of possible cases, infection prevention and control, and clinical diagnostics, so they are well prepared to advise or assist anyone who is suspected of having COVID-19. We would have increased regional and international collaboration. PAHO, WHO, Public Health England and CAFA have shared protocols to treat and/or manage cases of imported infections and stand ready to assist. Guidance and training of frontline personnel on hand hygiene and respiratory hygiene, cough etiquette is being provided. The necessary training has also been conducted for all custodial workers at the port of entry. The Environmental Health Division will carry out continual inspections at the airport and seaport, and cleaning processes will be assigned or assessed regularly. The government of the British Virgin Islands acknowledges and applauds the efforts made by the government of the People's Republic of China and has carefully considered the advice of the World Health Organization. Despite our continued belief, based on risk assessment, that the territory remains at low risk of transmission in light of the accelerated rate of reported cases and the need to alleviate the apprehension of residents within the territory, enhanced measures are being taken to minimize the risk to the residents of the Virgin Islands. However, Mr. Speaker, it is important to note that due to the incubation period of the virus, there are no systems of checks, devices, or protocols that can offer absolute protection. The ministry therefore strongly recommends that BVI residents avoid all non-essential travel to China and to be mindful when traveling to other countries affected by COVID-19. Some persons may only show symptoms 14 days after exposure to an infected persons. As such, members of the public are advised to remain vigilant and observe good personal hygiene practices, such as washing hands often with soap and water for at least 20 seconds, avoiding touching of eyes, nose, and mouth with unwashed hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick and remain at home if you are sick. Thank you, Mr. Minister, for the first statement. Mr. Speaker, for the first statement. The second statement, as noted, is that of non-communicable disease programs. In September 2007, CARICOM head of government convened a summit of non-communicable diseases, NCDs, to address the social, economic, and health burden of NCDs in member states. The key outcome of the summit was the Port of Spain Declaration that provides a 14-point roadmap for CARICOM countries to address several challenges, issues collaboratively. While the BVI government did not participate in the summit, the territory embraced the recommendations carried out of the CARICOM meeting. An NCD focal point was appointed in the Ministry of Health and Social Development to coordinate a national response. Dr. Vincent Scatliffe served as the first chairman of the 15-person multi-sectorial NCD task force. Among the early accomplishments were the completion of two of the first WHO STEPS survey in 2009 to determine the prevalence of NCD risk factors in the adult population, and the development of a 10-year NCD prevention and control strategy towards a healthier Virgin Islands. The NCD strategy was tabled in the House of Assembly in September of 2011. The study examined 5 key risk areas for non-communicable diseases: current daily smokers, overweight, obesity, raised blood pressure, consumption of fruits and vegetables, and physical activities. The survey showed that 57% of the productive population aged less than 45 had 1 to 2 risk factors, and 41% classified and being at risk for non-communicable diseases. The survey concluded that a very high prevalence of the risk factors of chronic disease exist in the adult population 25 to 64 years of age. These findings are a predictor of a high future burden of chronic diseases in the territory. Implementation of a strategy calls for an all of government and all of society approach. The Ministry of Health and Social Development has been working to develop comprehensive integrated programs with other sectors. The following are some of the highlights that have been initiated. In 2015, the Ministry of Health and Social Development and signed a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Education and Culture to strengthen school health coordination programs and policies. That same year, with technical support from the Caribbean Public Health Agency, the Ministry of Education, in collaboration with the Ministry of Health and Social Development, launched a healthy lifestyle, diet, and physical active school intervention within the public primary schools. The emphasis of school-based health promotion intervention is designed to instill in children the knowledge, skills, and motivation for adopting healthy lifestyle behaviors in the areas of diet and physical activity. These are 2 of the 4 modifiable behavior risk factors that can reduce and delay the onset of NCDs. 2, to further strengthen the physical activity component of the school intervention, the BVI participated in an 18-month Caribbean Association of National Olympic Committee pilot project. The project aimed to build stronger sports systems and improve the overall health and well-being of nations across the life course in 6 Caribbean countries. On the completion of the project, the Ministry of Health and Social Development, in partnership with the BVI Olympic Committee, sought to continue the work with the schools by engaging the services of Sports for Life Canada. In September, Sports for Life will work with the Ministry of Education to strengthen activity across the school day in early childhood centers and primary schools. Improving the quality of health care for persons living with chronic diseases is high on the agenda of the Ministry of Health and Social Development. And the BVI Health Services, both the ministry and the BVI Health Services Authority developed a 3-year chronic care action plan to improve the management and control of persons living with type 2 diabetes and hypertension. These 2 diseases were selected because statistics have shown that 90% of the patients seeking dialysis treatment is due to the complication of uncontrolled diabetes and hypertension. The Ministry of Health and Social Development is in the process of finalizing a national food and nutrition security policy and action plan. The Food and Nutrition Security Policy and Plan of Action is a joint venture between the ministry.
Members, I don't think it's fair for the minister to be competing while he's giving his statement with noise in the chambers. Please be polite to your colleagues as sections Standing Order 43C, and allow the member to give his statement uninterrupted. Continue, Minister.
The Ministry of Health and Social Development is in the process of finalizing a national food and nutrition security policy and action plan. The Food and Nutrition Security Policy and Plan of Action is a joint venture between the Ministry of Health and Social Development and the Department of Agriculture. The ministry is also receiving technical support from Public Health England to amend the 2006 Tobacco Control and Prevention Act and the 2007 tobacco regulations to bring them in line with WHO Framework Convention on Tobacco Control, FCTC. In 2017, the ministry has forged a stronger link with churches to strengthen and develop faith-based health ministries aimed at improving congregations and community health. The faith-based health ministry network will be the organ through which the Ministry of Health and Social Development will work with churches during phase 1 and other faith-based organizations during phase 2. It is against the backdrop of the findings of the STEP survey that the Ministry of Health and Social Development had signed a 2-year contract with Lifestyle Medicine Institute to use its Complete Health Improvement Program, CHIP, as a community-based initiative to prevent and reduce non-communicable diseases and the risk factors in the population. CHIP was introduced in the territory by its creator, Dr. Hans Dial, founder of Lifestyle Institute. Dr. Dial is also a clinical professor of preventative medicine at Loma Linda University School of Medicine. Over the last 30 years, Dr. Dial and his team have been fighting the risks or the rise in chronic diseases using CHIP as a proven lifestyle medicine solution internationally. Over 80,000 persons in the US alone have gone through this program. The program has also received over 35 scientific reviews by reputable health journals. The first cohort of CHIP facilitators was trained to run the program in various communities throughout the Virgin Islands. More details concerning registration and participation in the CHIP program will be announced within the coming weeks. This CHIP program, Mr. Speaker, is set to be launched. The other statement, Mr. Speaker, is one on the update of the Housing Assistance Program. Mr. Speaker, everyone will be aware of the catastrophic hurricanes of 2017, namely Hurricane Irma and Maria, that had exacted billions of dollars in damages to public and private infrastructures, buildings, and livelihoods. The effect of which the BVI and other regional island nations are still experiencing. It is human to admire the billions of dollars that were pledged in grants, not loans, grants, to our neighbors to the west and to the south. Mr. Speaker, the BVI is extremely grateful for the housing grants, for the housing grant assistance provided by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, the funding grant through the Recovery and Development Agency by Unite BVI for the construction of temporary housing units, and for the voluntary work contributed and undertaken by local, regional, and international philanthropists and non-profit organizations of whom the territory must formally acknowledge and recognize. Mr. Speaker, although previously reported, I am pleased to present an update on the support being provided by the government of the Virgin Islands to vulnerable households whose homes were damaged or destroyed by the 2017 hurricanes. A total of 562 completed applications were received under the Housing Recovery Assistance Program since its inception in 2018. 447 were met which met the eligibility criteria. To date, 209 beneficiaries have been approved to receive housing assistance in the form of grants, low-interest loans, or social housing from funding provided by the government. An additional 25 homes were repaired through a short-term program sponsored by the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. As of Friday, 14th February 2020, a total of $9,595,175.99 have been committed in home repair grants, representing 91% of the funds appropriated for this purpose. Another $3 million, Mr. Speaker, has been allocated for social housing, which is sufficient to build a total of 23 homes. Further to that, Mr. Speaker, 6 persons have been recommended for low-interest loans to be administered by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands at a total value of $460,000. Mr. Speaker, as I have previously stated in this Honorable House, the Housing Recovery Assistance Program was modified in April of 2019 to give priority to making homes watertight or water sealed through the installation or repairs of roofs, windows, and doors, together with essential electrical and plumbing works. The ministry is also now charged with the direct hiring and supervision of contractors on behalf of each of the beneficiaries, rather than the issuance of monetary grants to homeowners to engage qualified contractors on their own, as was previously the case. In order to meet this additional responsibility, the ministry has engaged the services of local architects, engineers, and quantity surveyors to support the work of the housing recovery team. Since May of 2019, 81 beneficiaries have been approved to receive assistance under the revised program through direct engagement of contractors for materials and labor. In addition to that, Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Health and Social Development provides temporary housing, building material grants, and rent assistance to help meet the housing needs of qualified households. With respect to temporary housing, the Recovery and Development Agency, RDA, assisted the ministry to provide support to several households that were displaced by the hurricanes of 2017. The RDA's total budget for temporary housing was $450,000, broken down as follows: government's contribution of $276,000, private donations of $174,150, of which was donated by Unite BVI, and the balance was received from a private donor. Mr. Speaker, a total of 11 beneficiaries received assistance through this temporary home initiative. 4 beneficiaries received new temporary structures, while the remaining 7 beneficiaries received upgrades to existing temporary homes. Further, Mr. Speaker, in an effort to expand and expedite our responses to home owners who are able to meet their own labor costs, but require some assistance in purchasing much-needed supplies, funding was provided in the budget estimates for building material grants. To this end, Mr. Speaker, a total of 40 applicants benefited from this initiative to the tune of $210,818.58 between November and December of 2019. So far this year, 69 applicants have been approved at a total sum of $434,730.11. Mr. Speaker, this allows us to provide immediate relief to affected households that can use a helping hand to purchase small quantities of building materials from local suppliers, a very important initiative in making sure that we spur the economy. In closing, I again place on record my commitment to the team of public officers across several ministries and departments, to the contractors and other partners for their diligent effort in responding to complex challenges as we work to bring housing relief to vulnerable families. Mr. Speaker, 2.5 years later, 30 months later, there remains a great deal of work to be done. There remains a large sum of monies required to complete our task. For as I have reported, we had estimated back then that over $35 to $45 million was required to complete this task. We are far from that total. This government will continue to assist in every way legal and financially possible. It grieves each of our hearts to visit and to witness the hurt and pains of our brothers and sisters who are shifting in their bedrooms to avoid getting wet every single time it rains. Our brothers and sisters who are yet displaced from their homes or shelters with no immediate solution in sight. Mr. Speaker, with God's grace and mercy, we will see this through. I thank you for that, for allowing me that statement. And I have one final statement, if I may.
Proceed.
That is concerning the opening of the Nurse Iris O'Neill Medical Center on Virgin Gorda. This is extremely short because in a few hours we would be all traveling. All the members of the whole assembly will be traveling to Virgin Gorda to make sure, yes, to. So we have to make sure, Mr. Speaker, that we have this under covered. Mr. Speaker, you are firstly informed, and I think that you have actually been advised that 2 Customs ferry will leave at the Cyril B. Romney Pier Park, Customs boat. Okay, so we would actually do that. Mr. Speaker, today my words may not be capable of communicating my immense pride and honor in announcing that the official opening and dedication ceremony for the Nurse Iris O'Neill Medical Clinic that will take place at 5 o'clock this afternoon on the grounds of the facility in the Valley, Virgin Gorda. As a member awaits proper credit where credit is due, I would continue to say that this significant event has been long awaited and eagerly anticipated, not least by the residents of Virgin Gorda who, over many decades, have called for such a facility to be erected to meet their evolving healthcare needs. Every aspect of the building, from its striking design by A.R. Potter and Associates to the high working quality of works performed by James Tadman Construction and various subcontractors, together with expert professional guidance drawn from both the public and private sectors, are all testaments of outstanding Virgin Islands talent and tenacity. Mr. Speaker, the history of this will be further recalled, but one will never forget the late Honorable Premier, Honorable Ralph Tilford O'Neill and District 9 representative, through the employ of Dawson and Wells, had first initiated this project. there were discourse and exchange held in the community center, and the community were resolute and absolute in what additional services they required. Mr. Speaker, various new services will be delivered from the facility as additional equipment is installed and the full complement of healthcare professionals are recruited. These will include audiological services, dialysis services, OB/GYN, chronic care, dental health, improved emergency and urgent care, family health, health promotion and education, pharmacy, laboratory, imaging, specialty clinics, and physiotherapy, to name a few. It also bears repeating that the new facility is expected to facilitate 24-hour service capability for urgent cases and emergencies, and will provide emergency stabilization and transfer of patients needing further or future care. Mr. Speaker, it is no exaggeration to say that a new day has come for the delivery of primary health care services to the people of Virgin Gorda and the wider Virgin Island community. The Nurse Iris O'Neill Medical Center brings us closer to the goal of universal health, and its design will serve as a model for future development in healthcare clinics in the eastern and western districts of Tortola, albeit on a smaller scale. The full functioning of these facilities will bring to communities a wide range of essential healthcare services that would meet the demand for better targeted interventions for prevention, early detection, and management of acute and chronic care conditions. Mr. Speaker, I keep on record our indebtedness to the present and former administrations who have worked over the years to bring this spectacular facility to life. We are also very much obligated to the project team, supported initially by Smith & Associates and later by the Project Support Services Unit, who were undaunted by setbacks and persisted down their determined path towards the successful completion of this project. Finally, Mr. Speaker, permit me to once again offer a sincere thanks to the donors who see the value in what we do and have chosen to give to this most worthy cause. The honorable member and district representative will have a listing and will be proud to announce the donations so far and to date. And one could never be too late. At the ceremony this evening, we will take pledges on site. No amount will be refused. None at all. Is this so, honorable member? Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I will continue. The opportunity is still present for persons who wish to contribute towards procuring medical equipment or completing the second floor of the building, which in fact have been repurposed, even as over the past few months, to make sure that all of the services enlisted prior could be accommodated on this center or in the center. With those few words, Mr. Speaker, I invite everyone to join in the celebration this afternoon as we cut the ribbon and usher in a new era of healthcare to the people of Virgin Gorda and surrounding communities. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the Deputy Premier and Minister for Health and Social Development for his statement. At this time, I recognize the Minister for Transportation, Works, and Utilities, and member for the 5th District, the Honorable Kai M. Reimer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, before I begin, I just want to again welcome all members to this first sitting for the new year and wish us all well as we carry out the work of the people of this territory. And I also want to acknowledge my good people of the 5th District for giving me the opportunity to be here, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to update this Honorable House and the citizens of the Virgin Islands and the progress being made with my ministerial portfolio, the Ministry of Transportation, Works, and Utilities, as we continue to forge ahead towards the improvement of infrastructure and utilities of our beloved Virgin Islands. Begin on Just Van Dyke, Mr. Speaker. There are undermining in 2 specific areas on the eastern main road and 1 on the southern side. Mr. Speaker, I'm pleased to report that of the 2 areas on the eastern end, 1 has already started rehabilitation. The other areas are on the heels of mobilization, whereas the contracts are already signed. Designs for the back road and bridge drainage underpass are completed and are being costed. With regards to the Dog Hole Road, while designs and costings are completed, there are some land encroachment matters that are under discussion with landowners and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Labor. On Virgin Gorda, Mr. Speaker, the Nail Bay Road Rehabilitation and Drainage Solution Project is well advanced, with the damaged section already being restored. Once again, the road is fully opened, and motorists are asked to adhere to all traffic signs. The design stage is in progress for the bypass road from Leverick Bay to Gun Creek. Following the costing and availability of the funds, this is intended to be a 2020 project. So, Speaker, on Tortola, road rehabilitation, road undermining and retaining wall structures, drainage solutions throughout Tortola will see works commencing this year. The specified areas listed are funded through the Caribbean Development Recovery and Rehabilitation Loan, and they are as follows. Fish Bay Road resurfacing and drainage solutions at the tendering process stage. Great Mountain Road restoration, tendering stage. Hope Hill Road restoration at the tendering stage. Little Dix Bay Road restoration at the tendering stage. Ballast Bay Road restoration, tendering stage. Long Trench Road restoration, tendering stage. Lower Fort Hill Road restoration at the tendering stage. Mr. Speaker, these projects are now, as I mentioned, at the tendering stage. Through the services of a consultant hired through the loan agreement. The consultant has currently completed his assessments and designs, and the project listed are available through a national competitive bidding process. The works of the consultant prior to the reaching this juncture is quite detailed, and I would seek to outline the key stages undertaken prior to the bids being available for tender. Mr. Speaker, the first stage undertaken by the consultant is the development of an Inception Report, which includes the preliminary sites and vulnerability assessments. After the preliminary site designs are developed and subsequently reviewed by the project team, then the final stage is the complete construction details and designs, which include the bill of quantities, the tender documents, and the environmental management plan. When that is completed by the consultants, the documents are forwarded to the CDB, Caribbean Development Bank, for their approval. Once approval is obtained from CDB, the Government Procurement Unit via the Ministry of Finance will finalize the tender documents, and the tenders are then advertised for a minimum of 6 weeks. Clearly, Mr. Speaker, this is a tedious and a detailed process. And separate to the CDB loan funding, Mr. Speaker, additional road rehabilitation and drainage solution projects that are being funded through the Government of the Virgin Islands Local Development Funds. The specified areas that my ministry has prioritized for development are as follows: Upper Fort Hill drainage solutions and road restoration, and we are at the assessment stage. Windy Hill road restoration, we are at the design stage. Joe's Hill, Parkwood Pond, Zion Hill, we're all at the design stage. Those are all at the design stage. Hooten Bay Road, road resurfacing and drainage solution, we are at the mobilization of work stage. Georgian North Side, Phase 2, road rehabilitation and drainage solution, we are at the costing stage. So, Speaker, these projects are, as I mentioned, are in various stages of designs and are being developed through the Public Works Department. It is anticipated that these locally funded projects will come to commence starting in the second quarter of 2020. So, Speaker, an update on some of the works. We have Shepherd's Hill Road, where it is 90% completed. Additional designs are needed to complete a small section of the road before its completion. Hannah Hill Road. Mr. Speaker, the Hannah Hill Road restoration project is in progress and is scheduled to be completed in the coming weeks. Upper McNamara Bypass Road rehabilitation and drainage solution works on the McNamara Bypass Road is completed, and the road is open for vehicular traffic. Thank you. On Anegada, as we are a government of inclusion, we have left no sister island out. And Mr. Speaker, on the island of Anegada, a number of secondary road projects will be underway. The design and costing has been completed and are now going through the de-reservation process. Mr. Speaker, with regards to the continuation of the main road works to the Correct area, I will be given an update at a later time. However, some remedial works will be done to bring some relief to the residents and visitors of Anegada. Mr. Speaker, I'm fully aware of the challenges our residents and visitors experience as they traverse the territory's roadways. Though these are long-standing issues today, I mainly refer to the usual areas that have been an annoyance to drive on, and especially since the trilogy of events that happened in 2017. We have the Fort Burt area to the McNamara Junction, Paramtong to Paraquita Bay, Little Apple Bay, Myers to Soldier Hill, and the Windy Hill Road just on Tortola, to name a few. So, Speaker, these and other areas are scheduled to be addressed with some additional methodology to properly preparing the areas by using tack oil as a sealant as a longer lasting remedy until we have secured funding to properly engineer and rebuild these roads. Rebuilding of the territory's road network is of utmost importance to this government, and such a brand new environmentally friendly asphalt plant was purchased. And as part of the purchase, we have trained technicians who would provide coaching to our public work team, whose job it is to operate this plant. And Mr. Speaker, we intend to address all the road concerns within our territory. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I have a few more messages, Mr. Speaker, I crave your indulgence. Sure. Water distribution. The Ministry of Transportation, Works and Utilities is expected to sign a contract in the very near future to supply over 5,300 ultrasonic water meters along with a wireless automatic meter reading system. It is expected that once these meters are installed, the residents and businesses will be accurately billed for their water consumption. It is anticipated that the meters will be installed and commissioned by the third quarter of this year. National Sewage Project. The Ministry of Transportation, Works and Utilities has prioritized Cane Garden Bay and the Eastern Langlo communities for a comprehensive overhaul and completion of the sewage system. The Cane Garden Bay Sewage Project is being undertaken in 2 phases. The first phase is a procurement, assembly, installation, and commissioning of a new wastewater treatment plant that will treat all sewage within the Cane Garden Bay area. The second phase is the installation of over 3,000 meters of new gravity and force main lines and lateral lines. It will also include the installation of 10 new pump stations with control systems and backup generators. Bid documents were issued in 2019 for the phase works. Evaluations were conducted of the bids received, and recommendation of contractors to undertake the 2 phases are currently being sent to Cabinet for approval. It is anticipated that works will commence in the second quarter of 2020 on this project. The Eastern Langlo Sewage Project is being undertaken in 4 phases. The first phase is the installation of over 1,400 meters of new gravity and force main lines, along with the construction and installation of manholes. The first phase commences at Paramtown to Long Swamp. Currently, bid documents for this phase of works are currently available at the procurement unit at the Ministry of Finance, and it is anticipated that works will commence on this phase in the 4th quarter of 2020. The second phase of works will commence from Fat Hogs Bay to Paraquita Bay Wastewater Treatment Plant. The third phase of works are the supply, installation, and commissioning of 7 pump stations and control systems along the entire road from Paramtown to Paraquita Bay Wastewater Treatment Plant. And the 4th phases of works are the repairs and commissioning of the Paraquita Bay Wastewater Treatment Plant. The second, third, and 4th phases will be issued for bid at a later date. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 2 more.
Continue, Minister.
Accommodation and relocation of the R.T. O'Neill Administration Complex. Mr. Speaker, since the decision was made by Cabinet to have the rehabilitation works and the R.T. O'Neill Administration Complex carried out by the Ministry of Transportation, Works and Utilities, the Ministry has been hard at work. As a matter of health and safety, it was decided that all occupants of the building needed to vacate the premises. And the process of finding available office space for the remaining ministries and departments, I can now say is completed, and I am pleased to report that several rental leases have been signed and others are being finalized. Works on the building, Mr. Speaker, to date, Professional Roofing has delivered 98% of the works in replacing the waterproofing membrane. Hence, the roof is now watertight. Finishing works is taking place as we expect to receive certification of the installation for the warranty purposes within the coming days before acceptance of the completed job. And note, Mr. Speaker, that the warranty is for 25 years for the works on the roof. Mr. Speaker, Wallen Glass Suppliers, the company that will replace the skylights to the R.T. O'Neill complex, is expected to commence works in the coming weeks, as the first container with the metal frames is due to arrive at Port Purcell next week, and additional updates will be forthcoming. Mr. Speaker, Bikers Fair. The Department of Motor Vehicles has partnered with Ultimate Vacation BVI Limited to ensure the success of the Ultimate Bikers Run 2020 that is slated for March 29, 2020 on Tortola. In preparation of the Ultimate Bikers Run, the DMV, along with the organizers, are hosting a licensing and registration drive this Saturday, 22nd February, starting at 10 a.m. behind the Ralph T. O'Neill Administration Complex. So, Speaker, available at the event we'd have the insurance agencies that would allow motorists or riders to purchase insurance coverage in order to complement having their motorcycle or scooter licensed. And Mr. Speaker, with the increased usage of motorcycles and scooters on our roadway, safety and rider education is paramount. Therefore, educational flyers will be handed out during the event, along with the administering of written exam, rider skills tests, and at the same event, Mr. Speaker, will be registering and licensing these motor vehicles, these motorcycles. The entire process can be completed right there on the spot. And Mr. Speaker, I am delighted that the department has partnered for this event. And I encourage all riders, all potential riders, all unlicensed scooters and motorcycles in the territory to come to this event on Saturday. And Mr. Speaker, I encourage the parents of these riders as well to come and accompany their children, because at the age of 16 you can ride a motorcycle, but I think education is lacking, and at this event, Mr. Speaker, we'll be able to provide as much information as possible so that we can have these motorcycles and scooters licensed, insured, properly fitted riders for our territory's roadway. Mr. Speaker, with those few statements, I say thank you.
I thank the Minister for Transportation, Works and Utilities, the member for the 5th District, for his statements. I now recognize the Minister for Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries and Agriculture, and member for the 7th District, Dr. the Honorable Natalio D. Whitley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a few statements. Thank you for the opportunity to deliver them. This one is on the training programs at H. Lavity Stowe Community College. Mr. Speaker, placing Virgin Islanders at the center of development activities through expanding access to educational opportunities continues to be a central focus of this government's agenda. The H. Lavity Stowe Community College continues to expand its offerings through various memoranda of understanding. Today, I'm pleased to give a statement on 3 recent programs in which the H. Lavity Stowe Community College has been engaged. The first is the Emergency Medical Technician Program. Firstly, Mr. Speaker, I'll speak on the Emergency Medical Technician Program. On Friday, the 31st January 2020, 6 candidates successfully graduated from the Advanced Emergency Medical Technician Program during a graduation ceremony and became the first locally trained cohort that is certified regionally by the Caribbean Association of Fire Chiefs through a Memorandum of Understanding with H. Lavity Stowe Community College. The program was delivered at the Dr. D. Orlando Smith Hospital by 6 instructors, namely Dr. Dominic Fraser, Dr. Chriselle Bovell, Dr. Craig Stout, Rodney Bratwitt, Nurse Gail Scotland, and Nurse Angela Rock. The curriculum was delivered based on both UK and US standards for 3 hours, 3 days a week. The scope of work included independent studies, classroom work and demonstrations, clinical rotations in the emergency room, operating theater, obstetrics ward, and submission of 2 research papers. The primary focus of the Advanced Emergency Medical Technician Program, Mr. Speaker, is to provide advanced emergency medical care and transportation for critical and emergent patients who access the emergency medical system. The program spanned 4 months, and qualifying individuals possess a minimum of 2 years prior knowledge. Mr. Speaker, the addition of the trained technicians is a big step towards enhancing the quality of care in the pre-hospital setting, as the technicians are now equipped with advanced skills to assess and intervene with the support of medical direction from a physician. They'll now be able to start number 4 access, administer drugs, and provide advanced airway support, which will give patients a higher level of care and decrease pre-hospital morbidity and mortality rates. I congratulate the graduates, Borton Richardson, Cordalia Gishard, Eric Thompson, Jacinda Etienne, Rudolph Lewis, and Chanel Williams. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to speak on the Solar Technician Training Program. On January 22nd, 2020, a Memorandum of Understanding between the H. Lavity Stowe Community College and Power 52 was signed to form the Caribbean Energy Institute to equip Virgin Islanders and belongers with the tools required to participate in the burgeoning renewable energy industry in the Virgin Islands. Mr. Speaker, it is no longer enough for the college to be offering the same programs for 30 years. That is why the college's new position is to become the regional institution of choice with new and redeveloped programs. It is believed that programs such as solar technician training and marine and maritime programs will so position the institution. The certifications attached to both programs, Mr. Speaker, are internationally recognized for quality, ensuring that graduates will be able to compete for employment at home and abroad. Students will be prepared to sit the North American Board of Certified Energy Practitioners examination for PV entry level, which then qualifies them to be installers, which qualifies them for the BVI's Class E license. Mr. Speaker, this training initiative was made possible through the combined efforts of the government of the Virgin Islands, the BVI Electricity Corporation, H. Lavity Stowe Community College, Power 52, and our major donor, Unite BVI. Thirdly, Mr. Speaker, the Marine Professional Training Program is 4 months of intensive training, inclusive of 2 months of courses at H. Lavity Stowe Community College, followed by a further 2 months of paid apprenticeship. Candidates commit to 40 hours per week for the duration in order to complete successfully. Mr. Speaker, the first cohort completed courses for Level 1, Marine Hand, and are currently in the field completing their apprenticeships. A second cohort for Level 1 begins in March. Students have received training to international standards certified and accredited by various bodies, including American Boating and Yachting Council, the Royal Yachting Association, BVI Lifeguards, and will soon complete standards of training certification and watchkeeping. Mr. Speaker, this training has been possible through generous grants from the Premier's Office and Unite BVI. As the college is now in its 30th year, Mr. Speaker, we can expect to learn of other educational opportunities that the college will be offering as we continue to seek new ways to empower our people. That is that one, Mr. Speaker. I'll continue with a statement on the additional year in public secondary schools.
Minister, proceed with your statement.
Mr. Speaker, last year I announced my intention to examine the additional year of instruction in our public secondary schools, with the intention of deciding whether it would continue. Mr. Speaker, I held public meetings which yielded useful feedback on the topic. I was able to confirm that indeed there were students in the system who benefited from the additional year, as well as students who are being held back by the additional year. Mr. Speaker, following those public meetings, it was recommended that I supplement the qualitative data derived from those public meetings with quantitative data derived from a scientific study. Hence, I commissioned the H. Lavity Stouts Community College's Planning Department to compare the performance of HLSCC students from the public secondary schools with the additional year with HLSCC students from private schools without the additional year. They also were to compare the performance of students before and after the introduction of the additional year. It is important to note that students who had an additional year first attended HLSCC in 2017. Mr. Speaker, the results of the study are enlightening. Firstly, St. George's had a higher success rate, which is the percentage of students with a C or better than Elmer Stout and Brigado Flax in 2017. And Seventh-day Adventists had a higher success rate than Elmer Stout and Brigado Flax in 2018. Both Brigado Flax and Elmer Stout had higher success rates in 2013 than in 2017 and 2018. In examining the distribution of grades between 2013 and 2018, there's no statistical data that supports any conclusion that the additional year of school improved performance at H. Lavity Stout Community College. In fact, in some instances, the private schools, which did not implement an additional year, had a greater percentage of A's and B's on the college level, or had results which were similar to that of their peers from public secondary schools. This is also reflected in the CSEC results. Therefore, I must conclude that research does not support the assertion that the additional year was a major factor in the preparation of these students for tertiary study. Mr. Speaker, what I can say with more certainty is that the performance of students is more closely aligned with the quality of their teaching, how well their style of learning is accommodated in the school system, the quality of their academic support at home, their socio-economic status, their discipline and willingness to learn, their foundation in early childhood education, the existence of any learning disabilities, among other factors. Mr. Speaker, we would be much better served in putting resources towards the areas that research has confirmed has had an impact on students' academic outcomes. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, it is also important that no student feels rushed or pressured into finishing school before the appropriate time. Students who need additional time to prepare for exams and complete coursework should not be robbed of this additional year. Therefore, a solution that benefits the individualized needs of the student population is necessary. Mr. Speaker, beginning in September 2020, I'm mandating that grade 10 students who have qualified based on their strong academic performance be given the opportunity to graduate in 2 years instead of 3. Once obtaining a grade of B+ and above, students can choose an accelerated track, which would still require them to complete the same graduation requirements, including credit requirements, examination passes, and community service hours, in 2 years instead of 3. In exceptional circumstances, students can qualify based on the recommendation of the principal of the institution. Those who fall below the required GPA will finish in the 3 years that are presently required based on the present graduation requirements. This initiative will be reviewed in July 2021. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. Mr. Speaker, my next statement is an educational update. Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to provide an update on some education matters. The main areas of focus during our professional development sessions is physical literacy for all and critical literacy. To promote physical literacy, Sports for Life team and the BVI Olympic Committee graciously donated physical education equipment to the schools. I express my sincere appreciation for their generous donations. In addition to the training that took place in August and November 2019, the final training is scheduled for the 4th through the 15th of May 2020. We also held our annual Excellence in Teaching workshops for teachers on Tortola and Virgin Gorda, also as a part of ongoing professional development. Discussions are still taking place with the Recovery and Development Agency, Mr. Speaker, as we seek to finalize the best design and layout for the remaining buildings for the Elmer Stout High School campus. We are also looking forward to starting the other buildings for the secondary school at Brigado Flax Educational Center, formalizing plans for the new primary school in Jas Van Dyke, and the rebuilding of the Eslin Henley Rochelle Learning Center in the newly designated area. In all our efforts in this rebuild, our emphasis continues to be building greener, smarter, and for inclusion. Mr. Speaker, learning must take place in a disciplined environment, and a clear structure is important for students. Our discussions continue to ensure that we make parents and students aware that we will not tolerate indiscipline. Last week, in conjunction with UNICEF, we hosted consultancies with all stakeholders as we began the review of the Student Code of Conduct 2006, and to develop a discipline policy for education. The meetings were successful, and we look forward to receiving a draft document for review in 3 to 4 weeks. In the area of inter-school competitions, Mr. Speaker, our students continue to showcase their giftings, talents, and abilities at a high standard. Mr. Speaker, we held the Spanish inter-school competitions last term with Francis Letson Primary School emerging in 1st place. Alta Scatliff in 2nd and Claudia Cricky in 3rd place. This term, secondary school debates are taking place. Last night we hosted the semi-final round, and we now look forward to the finals during Education Week between the debating teams from the Elmer Stout High School and the Cedar International School. I must say, Mr. Speaker, that the students have been performing at a very high standard in this series of debates. And I wish to commend the principal and staff of the schools that are participating for such a high standard of preparation. During this month, Mr. Speaker, schools have been hosting their sporting competitions. The best athletes from each school will compete in the upcoming inter-school athletic competition during Education Week 2020. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Education, Culture, Youth Affairs, Fisheries and Agriculture will be celebrating Education Week 2020 under the theme, Engage, Encourage, Empower, Educate. The week begins on Sunday, the 8th of March, with a talent extravaganza to be held at the Eileen L. Parsons Auditorium at HLSCC. Other activities throughout the week include Commonwealth Day activities at the Ivan Dawson Primary School, teacher exchange, inter-primary school sports competition, and open house activities at all schools. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I know that persons have been awaiting an update on the recent incident involving a teacher and a student at the Ivan Dawson Primary School. I wish to state, Mr. Speaker, that this matter is presently in the hands of the Teaching Service Commission and other relevant bodies. When they have concluded their processes, they will make their recommendations for further action. The ministry continues to take the safety of our children in the education system very seriously, and will be forming a task force to review and strengthen our policies and procedures to ensure our children's continued safety. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
That concludes your statements.
Not yet, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, continue, sir.
Mr. Speaker, the next statement is on the preservation of our fisheries sector. Mr. Speaker, I wish to briefly address this Honorable House on the matter of our marine resources as it relates to fisheries. When we contemplate the size and jurisdiction of the Virgin Islands, we often think only in terms of our land space, which we recognize may seem small on a global level. However, the Virgin Islands includes a marine space that covers over 87,000 square kilometers, which equates to over 21 million acres. Mr. Speaker, this large resource is one that our foreparents used for survival. They harvested its bounty to meet their nutritional needs and traveled to and fro on self-made sloops, trading produce, livestock, and fish between islands. They were conservationists in the true sense, harvesting only what they needed and treating the marine environment with respect. Older fishers, for instance, will tell you that they only harvested conchs and wilks of a certain size, leaving the juveniles to grow and reproduce. With the dawn of the tourism industry, we saw the use of our marine resources expand into areas such as the charter yacht and cruise ship industries, diving and fishing not only for food but for sport. This dynamic has now been given the name blue economy. Mr. Speaker, due to the vastness of this space, there's still much that we do not know or understand about our marine environment. And as such, our approach towards its use has always been one of careful use and conservation. Fisheries legislation, for instance, which last received a comprehensive revision in the late 1990s, details several conservation measures, not only concerning the fish themselves, but also fish habitats. The Virgin Islands Fisheries Regulations of 2003 designates 14 fisheries protected areas around the territory, from Jas Van Dyke to Anegada, and includes areas such as Hans Creek, Beef Island, South Sound, Virgin Gorda, the Horseshoe Reef, Anegada, and Money Bay, Norman Island. Fisheries protected areas restrict extraction of fish and are no anchor zones. Fisheries legislation also outlines a regime for obtaining licenses to fish, imposes bag limits, and requires reporting of fish catch. Reporting fish catch is important for helping us to understand our fish stocks, and we will continue to strictly enforce this requirement. Closed seasons and moratoriums on the capture of certain species of fish and turtles are also detailed in legislation, and size limits are imposed for the extraction of conch and lobster. Lobsters carrying eggs are also off limits. We are currently in the closed season for maggot and red hind, which extends until the 1st of March, and fishing for Nassau grouper is closed for the 1st March until the 31st of May. Other species with closed seasons include conch, lobster, turtles, and whelk. Mr. Speaker, as with our laws, there are instances of non-compliance. We receive reports, pictures, and videos regularly of illegal fishing from local and foreign vessels, extraction from fisheries protected areas, the capture of undersized lobsters and conch, and the list continues. We will take additional measures to ensure compliance, including the monitoring of businesses. One area that we must look at closely, Mr. Speaker, is the issue of fishing on and around the reefs. One of the deleterious activities that impacts our fisheries is damage to our reefs. Licensed commercial fishers who have vast traditional knowledge do not anchor or fish directly on reefs. However, we know that this type of fishing does occur. Anchoring, pulling nets, and fish pots across reefs is a practice that is prohibited, as damage to coral is a listed offense under our current fisheries regulations. Mr. Speaker, reefs are important as nurseries for many types of marine life, including fish. Damaged reefs take a very long time to recover. Overfishing can reduce the number of fish that consume algae, causing algal overgrowth on reefs, which then eventually die. Given the importance of our reefs to fishing and the health of our marine environment, all measures must be taken to protect our reefs. Mr. Speaker, my ministry will be encouraging lobster and fish farming, as well as aquaculture, as important and sustainable areas for fishing. Mr. Speaker, management of our fisheries is currently in a period of transition due to the decision made to merge its management with agriculture under the common theme of food security. The Department of Agriculture and Fisheries is a fresh entity and is now managed under my ministry. However, we work very closely with the Environment and Climate Change Unit of the Ministry of Natural Resources, Labor, and Immigration, as well as the Minister, as we recognize that the health of our natural resources is imperative to the survival and rejuvenation of a sustainable agricultural and fishing industry. Mr. Speaker, we recognize that we have many shortcomings concerning the management of our fisheries, but thankfully, the vast majority of persons comply willingly with our laws. Particularly during this period of transition, we have admittedly been slow in responding to applications for licenses at a pace that keeps up with the large volume we receive daily, particularly from the tourism sector. We are working hard to improve our efficiency in this area with the ultimate aim of reforming the application, registration, licensing, and data collection processes to an automated system. We also have shortcomings on the side of our surveillance and enforcement, and although we work closely with Her Majesty's Customs and Police, we encourage persons to continue to report illegal activities and likewise encourage offenders to desist from any form of illegal fishing in our territory's waters. We must recognize that the sustainability of our fisheries is a collective responsibility, one that we should all take seriously for our food security and economic development. Mr. Speaker, we are also working hard to understand our fish stocks to properly manage what we have. The Department of Agriculture and Fisheries is currently carrying out a stock assessment on conch and lobster in Anegada to understand the status of these commercially important species. Technical assistance and training for the project are being provided by the Center for Environment, Fisheries and Aquaculture Science, UK. It is expected that knowledge of the status of our conch and lobster species will improve management of the horseshoe reef. Fishers in Anegada have been receptive to this work and have been partners in this process. We anticipate that this partnership will continue. Mr. Speaker, we are also in the process of reviewing our laws for fisheries and agriculture to create an environment to support the development of the sector, in particular to place our fishers and farmers on a more secure economic footing as they grow their collective businesses and offer the invaluable service of providing fresh local food. Measures as it pertains to the conservation of turtles and important fish such as the parrotfish are also under consideration. Mr. Speaker, again, review of these laws cannot be done in isolation, and we welcome and will continue to provide avenues for interaction with fishers, farmers, and other stakeholders for designing the best way forward for these industries. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a couple more.
Minister, a couple as in two.
Let me count them for you.
I appreciate that.
Yes, I have two more, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Thanks for the count, Minister. You may proceed.
Mr. Speaker, this next statement is on the subject of my visit to United Kingdom in November 2019, followed closely by a statement on my trip to London, United Kingdom, in January 2020. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to make a statement on my trip to London in, my apologies, Mr. Speaker, I pulled up the wrong one. Let me pull up the next one. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to make a statement on my trip to London, my first official trip as a Minister of Government from November 20th to the 23rd, 2019. Ably assisted by the team of BVI's London office, I was able to meet with a number of entities. Mr. Speaker, I held successful discussions with key officials from the Economic, Youth and Sustainable Development Directorate of the Commonwealth Secretariat in London on the 20th of November. I was hosted at Commonwealth House by the head of Social Policy and Development Section, Mr. Lane Robinson, along with Program Minister, Mr. Sushil Ram, who welcomed engagement from the British Virgin Islands as a British overseas territory, which is associated with the Commonwealth through the UK. In our exchanges, I was keen to understand how the Commonwealth Secretariat and BVI could partner on areas of collaboration within key portfolio themes of youth, sport, and education. An overview of the training and technical assistance available in areas such as social and economic policy, governance, and capacity building with the goal of supporting decision makers in delivering policies for the well-being and prosperity in line with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals were explored. Mr. Speaker, I further gained a detailed understanding of viable opportunities for the BVI, such as participation in specialist training programs, including teacher training and sports development training, as well as data monitoring tools. Mr. Speaker, my discussions with the Commonwealth Secretariat are in line with the government's mandate to strengthen and explore new international relationships in positioning the British Virgin Islands for the future. I was accompanied by Acting UK-EU Representative Tracy Bradshaw, Deputy Director Siobhan Flax, and Political Affairs Officer Jante Chalwell of the BVI London office, and I thank them. Mr. Speaker, over 40 BVI landers living and studying in the United Kingdom turned up for an afternoon meet and greet hosted by myself and the BVI London office at BVI House in London on the 23rd of November during my first official visit to the UK. Mr. Speaker, I engaged in fruitful discussions with the audience on the BVI's progress and recovery developments post-Hurricanes Irma and Maria, and provided updates on a wide array of topics from sports to medical marijuana. I also provided updates on my recent trip to Paris, where I attended a series of meetings with the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, along with an overview of my London engagements with key stakeholders and various UK governmental departments. Mr. Speaker, students and scholarship recipients took advantage of the opportunity to address queries with myself one-to-one, and so did many of the residents who had individual queries of their own. Mr. Speaker, I was thrilled to spend the afternoon with the BVI community in the UK, and even more so to hear about the many talents, educational and business ventures that our people are engaging in overseas. I firmly believe that this is a signal of great things to come for the territory, and I have made it a priority to tap into the varied resources in our residents, in our growing diaspora in the UK. Mr. Speaker, following the talk, a warm BVI-style lunch and BVI-style pea soup prepared by BVI chefs residing in the UK was welcomed and a treat for all. Mr. Speaker, during my first official visit to the UK as a government minister, I engaged with senior officials from 3 UK government departments. Mr. Speaker, I met first with the UK Department for Education's Chief Operating Officer in the Operations Group, Mike Green. We openly discussed what technical assistance could be made available to the BVI in the area of special educational needs, teacher training, and the construction of disaster-resilient schools. Mr. Speaker, I explained the current challenges facing the BVI in these areas and sought the department's assistance in acquiring the technical and administrative support required to advance the BVI's overall ambitions. Mr. Speaker, I also met with the UK's Department for the Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, where we discussed opportunities to diversify the BVI's economy, in part through revitalizing the BVI's fisheries and agricultural development sectors. We also discussed at length available options for the regulation of the territory's commercial fisheries and licensing sector. Mr. Speaker, later a courtesy call was made to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, where I received a brief overview and update on the current state of affairs. There was an expressed willingness by the FCO to follow up and support my efforts in seeking technical assistance from the various stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, a visit to Hertfordshire allowed me to engage the territory's partners in Hertfordshire County Council on the local level. In East Herts, I visited 2 allotment sites. The first site was run by the Mudlarks charity, whose aim is to integrate people with learning difficulties and mental health issues into the community through gardening. The second site is dedicated to the community at large to grow fruits and vegetables. I indicated during my visit to the sites that I intend on establishing community allotments in the BVI. The concept of community allotments resonated with myself as an avenue for Virgin Islands to reconnect with their agricultural history and culture through community gardening. Moreover, the concept provides an opportunity to integrate the diverse members of our society, such as those with special needs and mental health issues. Mr. Speaker, in the afternoon's wrap-up session, I attended a meeting with the Deputy Executive Member of Education, Libraries and Localism, County Councillor Mark Mills Bishop, and Head of School Standards and Accountability, Tanya Rawl of Hertfordshire County Council. The meeting focused on understanding how the County Council approaches special educational needs, teaching standards and accountability, teacher training, behavioral issues among students, and vocational training. Further consultations on how the BVI can realize some of Hertfordshire's success in these areas will be made in 2020 with follow-up site visits. My visit to Hertfordshire County Council and East Herts Council actively sought to renew and further strengthen the BVI partnership with UK regional authorities on matters of importance to the BVI's development. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. And I have one more statement.
Okay, your final statement, Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to make a statement on my trip to London in January 2020, a follow-up to my previous trip in November 2019. Ably assisted by the team at BVI London's office, I was able to meet with a number of entities. Mr. Speaker, I attended the Education Ministers Action Group meeting, which was hosted by Commonwealth Deputy Secretary General Dr. Arjun Sudhu. This meeting brought together ministers from across all Commonwealth regions. The main objective of the meeting was discussions around advancing quality education for Commonwealth citizens, a mandate which is in keeping with achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. The EMAG allowed us as ministers to have meaningful exchange on best practices, share new initiatives, and explore new partnerships and opportunities. Mr. Speaker, our discussions were centered around building resilience through education, capacity building for educators, developing educational facilities which are fit for purpose, and supporting children with disabilities and special needs. Ministers also presented progress updates from the Africa, Asia, Caribbean, and Americas, Europe, and Pacific regions, and agreed to the priorities of the Conference of Commonwealth Education Ministers, which will all take place in 2021 in Kenya. Mr. Speaker, I provided an update on the state of education in the territory and current initiatives under my ministry, noting that some progress has been made in the territory since the devastating damage inflicted on all schools by Hurricanes Irma and Maria in 2017. Mr. Speaker, I shared that the territory is using the lessons learned in the aftermath of the hurricanes to improve the education sector while implementing regional education initiatives through CARICOM, the OECS, and other regional partners during this recovery period. I further highlighted the fact that there was yet significant work to be done in a number of areas, but the BVI government was committed to the task. Mr. Speaker, I also spoke of the government's desire to review the territory's curriculum and focus on teacher training and rebuilding green and sustainable schools, which I noted was consistent with the Commonwealth's NADI declaration, which places emphasis on building resilience through education and education for sustainable development. I further made mention of my ministry's plans to focus on the vocational capability of schools, ensuring that all students are equally equipped to contribute to the economy. Mr. Speaker, I was honored to be invited as an observer to the Education Ministers Action Group meeting by the Commonwealth Secretariat. The opportunity to network with fellow education ministers and get a grasp of best practices throughout the Commonwealth was particularly timely and beneficial, with education reform being one of my key priorities. My attendance at the meeting follows on from an initial meeting with the head of the Commonwealth's Social Policy and Development Section, Mr. Lane Robinson, in November 2019, and highlights the territory's commitment to furthering international engagement, particularly with the Commonwealth. Mr. Speaker, following the Education Ministers Action Group meeting, I embarked on an educational tour in Hertfordshire and Essex County, United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, I met with Hertfordshire education officials and head teachers while touring 3 foundational institutions in Hertfordshire on the 24th of January. The first was Southfield School, a specialized purpose-built primary school which caters to children with moderate learning difficulties, artistic spectrum disorders, and speech, language, and communication difficulties. Mr. Speaker, I also visited secondary institution Onslow St. Audrey School, which takes a more integrated approach as a mainstream school for children of all abilities, but provides special provisions and pastoral care for children with special requirements. Lastly, I toured the Link Hatfield, a specialist secondary school aimed at children who require behavioral interventions to their usual secondary tuition. Mr. Speaker, the University of Hertfordshire also hosted me for talks and a tour of the university's de Havilland campus. Director of International at the university, Mr. Stuart Smith, discussed with myself the potential for partnerships between the University of Hertfordshire and the H. Lavity Stoutt Community College in the BVI. Student progression in to the UK, delivery of degree programs in the BVI, staff exchange, and capacity building projects were explored. Mr. Speaker, I was hosted by Head of School Standards and Accountability, Ms. Tanya Rall, Hertfordshire Executive Member and Deputy Executive Member for Education, Libraries, and Localism, Councillors Terry, Doris, and Mark Mills Bishop. The BVI and Hertfordshire County share a memorandum of understanding which facilitates exchange in areas such as education, sports, and economic development. The county maintains one of the highest standards of education in the UK. Mr. Speaker, following my tour of Hertfordshire County, I continued in Essex County with a visit to Glenwood Special School, a purpose-built institution which caters to children with moderate to severe special needs and disabilities based in Essex, UK. The focus here was on the architectural design of the facilities, as well as the curriculum and overall school management. This school was designed by a consultant who will be offering assistance to the team tasked with redesigning Estlin Henry Richer Learning Center. I was given a tour of the school by the principal and consultant, which was very helpful. Viewing various school models allowed me to make a useful observation to better determine the aspects of design, curriculum, and management which would best serve the territory. I found this visit particularly useful in personally witnessing the operations of a top global special needs institution as we seek to improve our services to our special needs population here in the BVI. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
I thank the member for the 7th District and the Minister for his statement. Honorable members, it's now 2 o'clock, and after consultation with the Leader of Government Business, I'm going to recess this House until Tuesday, 25th February 2020 at 10 a.m. And we'll continue with the statements and follow the order of the day. This House is now in recess until Tuesday.